Porsche racing team owner, Bitcoin policy advocate, and now author as well. This is a very creative jack of all trades. CJ Wilson, really excited to talk to him again. And then we'll actually have John Riggins, Bitcoin Magazine's finest, Eric Pajwowski, and Alejandro de la Torre, who goes by Bit Entrepreneur on Twitter, to talk about some Bitcoin mining. This is a new segment we're trying out today, so really excited to have you guys check that out as well. And then we'll end the show with Nolan and the Breakup. We want to give away Bitcoin today, but we have a special kind of announcement. This is the last day that you can get 21% off your Bitcoin your Bitcoin 2022 conference tickets with the promo code YTMAG. So we'll drop sats if you guys buy tickets, but otherwise we're going to hold sats hostage today. Really want to incentivize you all to get your tickets because this is the cheapest you will ever find them until the conference. So if you're looking for Bitcoin conference tickets, highly recommend you get them in the next couple hours here before that promo code dies, and then you have to buy at regular price with all the plebs when you could have saved 21% and spent that 21% on Bitcoin instead. So I don't know. What do you think, Q?
Well, our producer Chris put it really well. This is the Cyber Monday deal for Bitcoin 22 conference tickets. I mean, yes, this is the last day you're going to be able to get 21% off. This is probably the cheapest these tickets are going to be. But if you guys do manage to buy a ticket or two during this stream and we end up giving out free Bitcoin on top of the discount you already got, you're kind of just like winning the whole game right there. So I don't see why, if you don't have your tickets yet, you don't go ahead and snag one right now. We'll post a link in the comments.
Yeah, listen, the question we sometimes get by trolls is like, oh, why would I spend money on that when I could just buy Bitcoin? Well, the answer is with this discount, you can buy both. Okay. And the benefit of coming to the conference over streaming it live is much like the benefit of joining us on YouTube as opposed to just watching the stream on Twitter. There's opportunities to actually like earn Bitcoin. There's opportunities to meet new people in real life in the conference. And we're going to talk about all the different events and speakers that are going to be there. And, you know, it's not just the learning opportunities. It's like this is like the biggest networking event for people who are interested in finance, in Bitcoin, venture capitalism, all of the above. Biggest networking event I'll attend all year, most certainly. And I'm pretty excited. I mean, I'm kind of Team Bitcoin Magazine for life, but we'll see. There's lots of other job opportunities for you plebs looking to make an exit from the fiat market, the fiat job market. I know we vote with our capital, but it's important to vote with your feet and vote with your time as well. And if you're working a job, me and Chris, the producer, were talking about this before the show. Even if you're working a relatively well-paying job, are you satisfied? Are you happy? I don't think work is supposed to be. I think actually one symptom of the fiat system is that they not only steal your time, but they've kind of quickly normalized having a miserable drudge, like kind of like dead end job and just really grinding day and night. Right? Is that not part of like the popular culture and the zeitgeist of today? Is just you have a shitty job and you just grind hard at it anyway.
I mean, that's the definition of the rat race, no?
The rat race, exactly. You don't want to be in that rat race. You want to think outside of the box. You want to be more entrepreneurial, be more creative, have more fun, have real conversations at work, not be censored by bullshit PC culture at your fucking grocery store job. Like you know what I mean? Like I feel like people who work in like freezers are being like have to like watch their language at work. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just so little freedom out in the industries these days. This is what the trucker Q, I want to hear your opinion about the truckers in Canada because I feel their pain.
I love it. I'm all for it. I was literally like thinking back to a time when I said a joke, a full-blown joke to my assistant who laughed, and we like dapped up and high-fived after I made the joke to her. And then the next day I get called into HR saying that someone else complained about the joke I made. So let me tell you, I'm a big fan of the Bitcoin community, not having me censor my thoughts because I like to word vomit as often as possible. And that said, I'm in full support of these truckers and what they're doing and what they're fighting for. Um, Funny enough, when I found myself in Canada years ago behind a man driving a snow plow to clear the roads, I was genuinely thinking, like, thank God you are working today and you did not just wake up today and decide, no, I didn't want to work, because otherwise I would be stuck in the middle of Banff with no idea where I am or where I'm going.
Yeah, I don't know. Larger point being, it can be tough out there, and if you've already discovered like some of the great things Bitcoin has to offer, just be aware that there's like a larger working whole community of Bitcoiners that are working to make hyper Bitcoinization happen, whether here at Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Conference, the whole list of Bitcoin only exchanges and products and services out there. Furthermore, like if there's something you want to build in Bitcoin, there's no better place to network. I believe Swan Bitcoin was started at the Bitcoin conference. President Bukele made his historical announcement at the conference. We've got more super secret crazy announcements that are happening this year. So I mean, come be a part of history. Come really celebrate. It's not that often that we all get to kind of come out of the woodwork and hang out together, unless you're a part of a local meetup. But this is an international event, guys. This is gonna be the place to be.
Yeah, I cannot stress enough, as someone who attended the conference last year as a pleb, unemployed as far as working in Bitcoin goes. That was definitely the largest catalyst for me ending up where I am now. I know our industry day is going to be really geared and focused on helping those of you who are not necessarily working in Bitcoin, finding a job in Bitcoin. If there's a day that you absolutely want to attend, I would say for those of you who are not yet working in Bitcoin but aspire to be, make a point to attend the industry day and you will not regret it.
Yeah, we've got Eastside Tony in the chat says he hates his job. So at least I get paid to watch Bitcoin Magazine live. Yeah, Eastside Tony, you get those sats if someone buys conference tickets, man. We'll release those sats. Shit, I'll send you your own promo code if someone buys a conference ticket.
I was also on Eastside Tony brought this up, as well as Chris, but just a reminder, if you do decide that you want to spend your Bitcoin, you get an additional discount buying conference tickets with Bitcoin. So on top of that 21%, you could take a nice little extra discount buying with Bitcoin, and then we'll throw out some stats so you can make up for the stats you just sent over our way.
Yeah, I think it's $100 price cap right now, right?
Yeah.
$100. Okay, so it's even more than I don't know what percent that is. That's got to be getting close to 30%. Buy your Bitcoin 2022 tickets with Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be your cold storage Bitcoin. Just instead of paying cash, just buy some Bitcoin on strike. Buy your tickets with that Bitcoin, and you're gonna get 21% plus $100 off your tickets. Just bet on yourself. If you can't find a way to make it to the conference, just I don't know, resell the tickets or something. But these are definitely a scarce asset that you're gonna want to get right now, today, because that discount is ending, unfortunately.
Oh, I did not know this.
What?
Apparently you can earn sats back at various venues at the conference. So boom, even if you spend sats, which you will save on the price of the ticket, we will send you sats right now. And on top of that, you can get sats when you're actually at the conference. This is hilarious. Chris paid for his ticket by playing video games with ZBD at the Tab conference last year. So
That's awesome.
there
Yeah,
goes
you'd have to play a lot of video games this year, but I think you could do it if you if you really want to pay for a Bitcoin 2022 ticket.
I'm pretty sure Chris was the guy that we were announcing last year. It was like, hey, can someone bring water to this guy who hasn't moved in 48 hours?
Yeah, this is gonna be awesome, guys. There's a lot of opportunities, like interesting workshop opportunities, fun things you can learn about, like hardware wallets, Lightning. We're gonna put Lightning invoices on coconuts. Like, there's all kinds of crazy opportunities to spend your Bitcoin if you're just feeling like, I don't know, what's it called? Activity bias. If you're feeling some activity bias and you want to play around with your money, you're an old person nearing retirement, come to the Bitcoin conference, spend all your Bitcoin. It'll be great. Um, yeah, we're really excited about this Bukele super secret announcement. I'm really bullish on Bukele right now in general. I think he moved the market by saying he thinks the price will go up. I think, when you get like 30,000 people liking a tweet, like some of those people had to just like FOMO YOLO into the price, and it looks like we're gonna hopefully break above 40 today. That'd be nice. Or not. What do you think?
We'll see. I mean, we were literally going back and forth on this morning of where we think it's going to go. Uh, Chris highlighted and brought up. I mean, I don't know if people caught this. I don't know if it's a faux pas or an accident or what, but Keiser was being interviewed last week and was being asked like, what is the possible next country to do it? And like he kept on being like, I don't know, maybe Guatemala. And then all of a sudden you hear chatter from like behind the camera, which essentially was telling Keiser, hey, you need to stop. Like you can't even suggest a country right now. So just stop this line of conversation. And then Kaiser's like, yeah, no, we can't talk about this anymore. So like, it's happening.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm setting the over under, and maybe let's throw this if we can, this question to those in the chat. Like I'm putting the over under at 1.5 countries adopting Bitcoin as legal tender this year. So
What do
I
you mean
think
one
it's
and
going
a
to be,
half?
I think there'll be more than 1.5. So I think there'll be two or more. But if you
Okay.
think there's only going to be one country or no countries in this calendar year by December 31st, 22, if we end and you think it's only El Salvador or only El Salvador and one other country, that's the under. Everything else, if you think it's more than two countries or more, hence the over.
I think there's going to be a twist. Like, I don't think it's going to be the same manner of adoption that El Salvador took, the same path. I think it's got to be probably a dollarized country that's been through hard times and it's got, a somewhat crazy dictator at the helm ready to impose changes on the people. I'm not saying it's for the worst. I mean, like the great thing about dictators is they'll tell you what to think and they'll, they're not all the decisions they make are inherently evil. But I'm you know what it's true, man.
You're not
I
wrong.
think Bukele gave power back to his people. I don't care what else he did. He gave them an opportunity to learn about sovereign monetary property that'll change their lives forever. I mean, I am thousands of percent like more wealthy than I was before Bitcoin, and that's because I had no means of saving in the dollar. I had no understanding of economics. I had no understanding of finance. So like giving these people Bitcoin, like it will meaningfully impact their life, even for a small percentage of people for whom like the lesson sticks, for whom it clicks. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for countries. It's obviously not a one size fits all solution, and a lot of people are going to reject it. A lot of people think it's like a pyramid scheme or some kind of bullshit, but we can address all that. I mean, there's several there's several good points to debate there.
I mean,
I'm excited. I think it's funny that these these leaders are in talks with like Max Keiser about about adopting Bitcoin. He's so like I love Max Keiser, but he's a kind of eccentric guy to start having like serious political conversation or financial conversations for nation's people with.
you're not wrong. That's why I'm laughing so much because anytime I think about Kaiser, my first thought is genuinely him walking on stage last year with his like white
Yeah.
suit, orange t-shirt, just middle finger to the sky, saying "f you" to everyone that he just candidly didn't like.
Yeah,
Right
doesn't this
before
guy like
interviewing with
not wear
Michael Saylor.
pants? Like every other picture I see of Max Keiser, he's just like in his boxers, just like just
No. Those are
like
short shorts. They're not
what is he like
boxers.
9 feet tall?
Dude, have you worked out enough? Like the short shorts give you so much more movie. He's probably like constantly like mid interview just doing squats and push-ups. Camera goes
Yeah.
off of him. He does a quick set of 10. He feels like the Energizer bunny that has so much energy that eventually like he has to like burn all the energy so he can actually go to sleep, but he doesn't really sleep.
Yeah, he's got a lot of energy, man. We need to get him on the show. Bring us some of that energy. It'd be awesome. I think we should have a pretty good lineup of speakers actually on the show before the conference. So I'm excited about that for you guys. I think I already told you. I don't know, Q, do you want to talk about some of the people that you're bringing on? Besides CJ, who will be here 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, I mean, we're cooking up some fun stuff with the show. We have later this week actually someone that I genuinely admire. I read his weekly emails. I've been reading them now for over a year. Um, Peter Diamandis, who is a big investor both in the tech space, literal space, as well as in healthcare. He was formerly a doctor, but then decided to pursue a lot more technological advances in businesses, and is a big proponent and believer of Bitcoin as well. So really excited for that conversation on Thursday. And then next week we got quite a few people. We have Mark Moss coming on, and then we'll also have Vijay Boyapati for next week's Bitcoin Book Club segment.
Super bullish. Mark Moss and VJ, I'm sorry, are on the same week next week.
Yeah, we have Mark
Cool.
Moss on Tuesday and VJ on Thursday. And so long as Alex doesn't make me cave, those will be our two marquee guests for next week. And now we'll be continuing to
Wait,
populate down.
what would caving mean? What do you mean? Oh, get someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, we gotta always go bigger. We get more. We can get Max Keiser in there. Or we could have VJ and um we could have VJ and Mark Moss talk to each other. That'd be do a super episode. But I think they're both speaking at the conference this year too.
They are. Well, Mark is. I don't know if VJ is confirmed, and I don't want to steal the thunder quite yet.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean that's the sensible thing to do. If you're a big name in Bitcoin, you might as well be speaking at the conference. No, why would you miss that opportunity?
Dude, honestly, Chris, I need to shout out Chris right now because he's making me crack up so much that I'm going to have a very hard time today. But he wants to try to trick Biden into coming on to legalize Bitcoin. I mean, like,
not definitely not out of the question.
right? Like, it's so within the realm of possibility
Yeah.
that, like, but I mean, we will see it. We're excited. We're going to be throwing a lot of new stuff at you guys. Here we have a really, really exciting thing that all of us working on this that are here right now, as well as behind the scenes, are cooking up for those of you who can't attend the conference. But like Alex said, the big announcements that stem out of this conference, like being in the room to watch Jack Mallers deliver the news about El Salvador after the hours and hours, and honestly, the weeks, months he had spent to help push El Salvador towards Bitcoin adoption, to watch him share that moment with everyone. Like, that's just one of those things that I'll never forget where I was. And I'm grateful that I was at the conference to actually see that.
Yeah, man. And I'm looking through the speakers now, and as I always do, it's something new catches my eye. I'm really excited to see, the open source stage, like the mining focused events there. I think some of those technical talks are going to be like some of the most fun. I'm gonna check those out. Econo Alchemist has an amazing Twitter page full of home mining tips and tricks and things you never would have thought of. Just kind of a mensch, like engineering different mining solutions. We've got, of course, who else we got? We got Marty Bent. We've got Jonathan Chester of Bitwage has some really interesting ideas. I think they're integrating Lightning into their payment solutions as well. So that's pretty bullish. There's more people than I can even name off. American Hodl, that'll be legend. I haven't heard from Hodl in a minute, man. This guy like disappeared. He's like not on Twitter anymore. Or am I missing him? Am I blocked? Is he on Twitter?
I'm pulling it up right now. I don't see him. No, he's
He lives
no.
on Clubhouse. Who is on Clubhouse still? Last time I logged into that app, there were like 6 people. There was like no Bitcoin room.
I was invited to Clubhouse and like laughed when I saw sorry, I was like reading the notes because I was going through the conference list. But yeah, I mean, my favorite thing about Clubhouse is the fact that they received a $4 billion offer valuation to buy them out. And like, say what you will, I'm gonna call out David Sachs right now from the All In podcast. because he has this ability to be so arrogant but nonchalant about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say when I first discovered the All In podcast about 2 years ago, they were talking about PayPal in particular. And David Sachs is one of the original founders of PayPal. That's where he made his nut. And then he's turned that into his entire VC firm, yada, yada, yada. But he kind of talked and broke down PayPal, where he essentially said, like, look, we sold PayPal at the time for uh, somewhere to the tune of like a single-digit $1 billion deal. And when we did that, it was incredible. We were the biggest winner. We were, we won massively. Like, we were geniuses. We were brilliant. Like, thank you, eBay, for buying this from us. Like, go do whatever you see fit. We're gonna all of us, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, David Sachs, and all the others went off and did whatever their hearts desired at that point.
Wait, can I bring this back for 1 second? Didn't David
Sure.
Sachs try to start like a Clubhouse competitor called like
Yes,
Callin?
yes, no, he has started it, and it.
Oh, okay.
I want to bring this full circle though,
Okay, okay.
because on this segment 2 years ago, he was talking about how eBay did nothing to further the actual code of PayPal. At its core, it's really just the same as like when they essentially handed it over. And even still, once PayPal like broke off from eBay and became its own entity, they still really haven't changed too much of the code. Like, the concept of Venmo, yes, has been adopted into PayPal, and that didn't necessarily exist. But at its core, the peer-to-peer transaction system that PayPal was designed to do still exists. But now the valuation of the company is something to the tune of the hundreds of billions of dollars. So you've seen another 100x on that original sale with like very little to almost no changes in the code. And so his whole rant in that moment was like, that's just a great lesson of like, hold on to your big winners, because like you don't know how much higher it can really go and keep going. And he kind of talks about how like that in theory was my best investment. Like, I had the biggest returns off of just exiting where I did, but I'd even have greater returns if we had just held and continued to go down that route. Now, fast forward to the whole Clubhouse stuff, and he was the most vocal person bashing Clubhouse, saying, oh, these guys are fools for not taking the deal on the table, yada, 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 whatever the reasons or logics are. The man literally took the opposite side of the point that he made, not even 12 months earlier.
Yeah.
But to your
I think he
point,
was right on this because Clubhouse fucking died, bro.
well, I think it died. I think it died in twofold. A, because Twitter really invested heavily in Spaces, and I think they were just outpacing
Let's
Clubhouse's
be honest,
growth.
though, not heavily enough. Spaces kind of sucks.
Well, Spaces sucks, but
There's great Spaces, but it does not work as smoothly as Clubhouse.
the issue with Clubhouse that I kind of always was like laughing about is like, it's this quote unquote exclusive invite only sort of social media platform, but like, you
That
don't
was
need
brilliant.
invite only. Like,
That was brilliant, though. Brilliant marketing.
you actually liked that.
They limited their audience for 6 months, but dude, I was fucking pumped when I got an invite. Because listen, you know how your phone's always listening to you through ultrasonic like Bluetooth
Yes.
tracking? I never like looked up like how do I get into Clubhouse? I was just like, oh, there's this app called Clubhouse, blah blah, and I just started talking about it with the my girlfriend. I think I was talking about it with, and less than 12 hours later, I got an invite from somebody I hadn't talked to in like 6 years, and I found out that what happens is the app will suggest people in your contacts based on that, you know, listening to your through your fucking phone, and it'll suggest that you send them an invite. Be like, you haven't talked to them in a while, like send them an invite. It was crazy.
I guess. I mean,
And then you get to invite people. It's exclusivity, man. It's great. Like,
I did not like it, but for other reasons.
sounds like somebody didn't get an invite.
I got an invite so early, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing. Like, Chris brings up a good point, but I kind of challenge your point where like Facebook did start the exact same way. It was Harvard only, then they went
Yeah.
Ivy Leagues, then they went Stanford colleges, opened it up.
Yeah.
But you did that in a market where there was one other real international social media platform with MySpace at the time. Like, you can argue AOL, but that wasn't really social media like to what we know now. But then for Clubhouse to create itself after you have the likes of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok having blown up, like Snapchat, I don't know what else I'm missing. Half of these apps I don't even use, but like that just kind of like shows the oversaturation of the market, where yes, you're creating this like fun little exclusivity thing, but like once you open the door, once you get in there, there has to be more. And I think that that's where they dropped the ball, is they didn't continue to expand their actual user base. They were so much more focused on growing users, but they had that figured out. You were going to naturally increase your user base. You weren't, however, going to retain, and you were increasing your churn as your user base grew. And I think that was the inherent flaw.
I have to make an announcement. We've got some breaking news that just occurred. New speaker at the conference. We've got the Canadian trucker convoy is making their way to Miami for the Bitcoin 2022 conference. Get your tickets for 21% off, promo code YTMAG. Come see the trucker convoy in all their glory, all their what is the demographic of the truckers? Where did they come from? What are they doing?
Canada.
Can you just break this down for me? Yeah, but what are they doing? Where are they going?
My understanding is they are essentially upset over the fact that the vaccine mandates about going back and forth from the US-Canada border will now require those who are unvaccinated to have to quarantine once crossing the border, as though them sitting in their truck for the days on end that they do with limited to almost no exposure to other human beings is of more detriment than, I don't know, Congress gathering in DC or wherever Parliament in Canada. This shows my ignorance a little bit. Wherever Parliament in Canada goes and gathers, those gatherings have less of an impact than drivers crossing the border. I also am a very, very vocal and big believer of the fact that how dare we at any point in 2020 tell people that you are, oh my God, I'm spacing right now. What was the word that we used for like workers who like had
Kazakhstan?
No. Shit. Is the stream still up or did it get shut down?
No, we're going.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed that I can't think of this word right now. But like for the workers who like the healthcare workers, the janitors, garbage people, like those who just like we couldn't stop. They couldn't stop working just because there was a global pandemic. Like we relied on them so much. Truckers were in that same category. For not the first responders. Oh my God. Can someone in the comments save me? But anyways.
Well, let's get you a dictionary, an online dictionary. No, that's the worst when you've got it and you can't think of it. This is gonna be interesting actually having Scaramucci on because
essential
he went
workers. Thank
essential
you,
workers, right? We've got all these essential workers, essential government employees who are running around to parties and baseball events. Meanwhile, all the nation's like 5-year-old children are like masked up, like inoculated, you know, shots in the arm.
I want to call out my least favorite governor. I want to call out the governor from my home
Gavin
state,
Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, you are absolutely despicable. And I cannot believe you were at a stadium in your state after you created the mask mandates and you were sitting there posing with Magic Johnson without a mask while everyone else is required to wear a mask even when we take a picture. So Gavin Newsom, what the fuck, bro?
You've got actual fuck. He's at a baseball game. Meanwhile, all the 5-year-olds in California are like duct taped on Zoom, their mouths duct taped shut, just like watching their Zoom classes. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. Such a clown world, man. I can't get behind any of that. But anyway, I'm really interested when we talk to Scaramucci. I'm gonna be like, how do you reconcile these two positions? Like, what you're in Bitcoin for the freedom. You're trying to give everyone experimental medicine. I'm not trying to get us canceled. I just it's crazy, man. It's gonna be an interesting talk. Get ready for that.
I presented it like this, where it's one thing where we are in America and these vaccines, some of them are being manufactured and produced here. It's a whole other story when you start to go to a foreign country. Like almost my entire family, most of them still lives in Iran. There are no vaccines really being produced. There is one, but even the Iranian citizens are opting to take other vaccines. If like the AstraZeneca one is an example of one that's offered in Iran. There's also one that's manufactured out of China that's offered in Iran. But like to just be told by a foreign country that frankly, you have not had a great relationship with over the last 70 years to be told, hey, you should take this. You need to take this. You have to take this. Like what? Wait, after the last 50 years where you've put God knows how many different sanctions over us, you haven't allowed us to sell our oil. You haven't allowed us to transact in the modern business and economy. You're then going to tell us that we have to take this substance.
But that's what happens when we're the world reserve currency. We have leverage over every other nation.
Of course, for now.
for now.
I forgot to grab the tinfoil hat.
Oh yeah, you got to make yourself a tinfoil hat. Oh, he's leaving. Let's dig into some of these speakers. Who we got? We got Dylan LeClaire. I'm so excited to see Dylan on stage. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stefan Livera, Samson Mao. I hope he shows up in a helicopter. He's been posting a lot of helicopter videos lately, buzzing around El Salvador. Francis P. I don't know how to say this, Francis. I'm sorry, because it's like French. Pouliot, the founder of Bull Bitcoin in Canada, goes really hard in the paint on Twitter. He has an awesome Twitter follow. Excited to hear him. Pierre Richard will probably bring the heat. Be awesome to talk to him at Bitcoin 2022. Yeah, this list is literally this infinite scroll bar. It just keeps going. There's so many speakers at the conference.
I mean, I also want to specifically highlight one of my favorite podcast hosts and just overall favorite investors, Preston Pish, who will be there in some
For
capacity beyond just speaking to, I hope. But want to give him a shout out and quickly plug his show because he is great and brilliant, and you will learn a ton from just listening to him talk for 30 minutes.
Isn't he coming on? He's coming on our show at some point. We'll get him on here.
Hopefully one day. Preston, if you're watching this, come on.
One day.
Come to the show.
Yeah. We're growing show.
Investors Podcast didn't hire me, so you got to come to the Bitcoin Magazine show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Alex Gladstein will be there. And this isn't just people. I mean, it's like, how much would you pay to go see your favorite band in concert, but then make that all the bands, and it's like a 3-day festival event, plus an actual music festival at the end of the event. Plus, it's all people who have one thing in common at least, and that's Bitcoin. And we know how sort of tight the Bitcoin community is. And it's a small world. And you're going to have the opportunity not just to see these people speak, but to hang out with them. You know, hang out with Matt Odell, Jimmy Song. You can watch Svetsky and Alex Gladstein debate in person, real time, at a bar, maybe. We'll see. Greg Foss. I'm excited about that one too.
Yeah,
did the seed signer guys end up doing AOPP? Is that what it was? That update that we were all up in arms about last week? Is that one of the wallets?
Oh, I thought that some of the wallets turned around and they decided they weren't going to follow through.
They decided they weren't. Okay, Seed Signer was not one of the wallets, so you can come see them speak. I was like, you can come hold these people to task and you know, have that discussion. But it seems like AOPP is not going to last till the conference. Seems like we squashed that pretty quick. Which good going, gang. If you're on Twitter, it's causing up a ruckus. Let's see. Who else do we got? Who are you excited about, Q?
I'm always excited to hear Sailor speak. I mean, I've seen some of the other ones that we have not yet announced, but I'm also, you know, I am very excited to just hear what the panel I'm not saying it's going to be all of them. I know that Andrew Yang and Joe Jorgensen will be there. I know that there's a conversation with some other current politicians as well on both sides of the aisle. And I'm interested to see what that conversation is like, because I genuinely believe that politicians who are focused on Bitcoin are really focused on the lens of the global Bitcoin market, not their political affiliations. And I'm interested to see what those conversations are going to be like and what maybe decisions or ideas stem from that.
I'm interested to, like I said, dive into the technicals. I'm not very political. I might become some kind of single issue Bitcoin voter. Maybe that'll change. Definitely have more of an interest in politics. I think a lot of people in Bitcoin might be like this, where there's kind of not a good way to approach it because it's so fucking boring and like infantile, and all of the just like shit slinging and journalism and politics in general. But you kind of have a way in when you have a common interest, and that would be Bitcoin. Obviously, with most of the politicians understanding less about it than you yourselves, listeners, if you've even done an hour or two of your homework. So yeah, there might be a place for some of that at the conference. It'll be exciting to see. I'm excited for the more technical side. I'm excited to see NVK or listen to NVK. I don't know if they'll be coming. They're NIM, right? So maybe they'll be in like a green bodysuit or something.
Really quick, I want to address a question from the chat, and
What do
I'm
you got?
pulling it up. I do not believe that. So actually, yes, the GA pass will include a ticket to Sound Money Fest on day 4, Eastside Tony. So we'll touch on Sound Money Fest, but yes, GA pass will include 2 days of the actual.
Actually, why don't you screen share? Let's just go through it. Let's just
Okay.
talk. Let's talk tickets and value. Um,
Boom. So the industry day, which we
yeah.
have talked about, that
Mhm.
is only going to be accessible if you have an industry pass or a whale pass, but that is an investment in your future more than anything, I would say. Your GA pass
Yeah,
gets you,
Whale Pass is like you're balling. Whale Pass is like
yeah, you're
you're
balling.
well on your way to becoming a millionaire, or you just already see yourselves as a millionaire, or you are a millionaire and you're just ready to kick it with other super wealthy people, kick around some good ideas, network. I would buy a Whale Pass if I wasn't already going as a special whale. Would you buy a Whale Pass?
uh, I need to have multiple. I have a rule of thumb, which is if I can't afford to buy that something 2 times over, I can't afford to buy it. So
Okay. Interesting. Um, I'll get you a whale pass. Q's gonna be there too. He's got a whale pass.
I mean, I'm assuming that we all have well passes, big employees of the
I
company, but who knows?
I like
Maybe
what Chris
Rizzo's
says.
watch.
I'm a baller. I'm a baller on a budget.
Rizzo, if you're watching this, can you please make sure that we all have whale passes?
I think you'll get a whale observation deck pass, so you can just like kind of like watch them from a window, but you're not allowed to talk to them. You can check their coats as they roll into the yacht.
We have the minnow pass, not the whale pass.
Yeah, you get a fish pass. Whale watching.
um, but I mean, this is a quick little breakdown of the cost of the different tickets and what you sort of get access to, and then there's a bunch more stuff for those who do end up getting a whale pass down here as well. But at bare minimum, you guys should make your way out to Miami, and it'll be a great time.
Yeah. And wait, can you share that screen again? I like looking at that. Or let's go pull up the speakers. Let's just take apart some different aspects of the website. So I mean, Whale Pass is like you're gonna be backstage with like most of these folks in their specially catered rooms, kind of like white glove service, just like special events. You got your own DJs, you got your own food, you got your own networking opportunities. But even if you just show up as a regular pleb, there's room to interface with all these people. Can you just like kind of scroll down, Q, and so they can see what we mean when I say there's like literally too many speakers to even talk about. Yeah, we've got some absolute killers. Drew Bonsall, I've never seen him in person. That'll be pretty exciting, actually. I think he's writing an essay for Bitcoin Magazine right now. I'm gonna check that. What events are you most looking forward to, Q?
I am not gonna lie, I am so hyped for Sound Money Fest. You know me, I like to have a good time though. So
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
Drew Bonsall wrote the Bitcoin Astronomy series, did he not? He's the guy that thinks there's going to be like a Elon coin. You gonna Google it for us?
I'm googling it live.
Yeah, Unchained Cap. Yeah, that's him.
Just by Drew Bonsall.
Yeah, hell yeah, I'm
Wait, I've
excited for
not,
that.
as you can tell, I've not read this. So
You haven't read that piece? You got to read that. You got to read this piece. Okay, so this let me give you the breakdown. This piece posits that it's basically like any good astronomy piece or like physics piece. It gets right at the heart of the issue of like scope. So like most of the things that happen are either like too big, too small, too near, too far, too loud, too quiet, invisible to like the human experience. And so when you start thinking in terms of like so you don't like bias your thinking in terms of like a possible future or a series of possible futures. Like you have to take scopes outside of these, and in a much broader scope, like Bitcoin mining is totally centralized to Earth. So the question is like, will it always be centralized to Earth? And it's like, well, probably not, because you can use Bitcoin anywhere in the solar system, anywhere in the universe, technically, by virtue of just holding it. And so he writes about what happens when we actually colonize Mars or the moon. Can we mine? You could mine competitively. You could mine Bitcoin from the moon, but there is obviously like a problem, which is you're going to incur a signal transmission penalty due to the speed of light. So you can be profitable on the moon because I think it's, I want to say like two light minutes or something like that away. So there's like a 2 to 4 minute lag to send a signal there and back. So their copies of the nodes, their copies of the blockchain are going to be like a couple minutes outdated, but you can still mine profitably. You can't gain a majority of hash share without like all of the hash power moving to the moon for some stupid reason. That'll probably never happen. You can't mine competitively from Mars unless the majority of the Bitcoin hash rate actually moves its what you would call its center of hash toward Mars altogether, or a bunch of, let's say like all the miners shut down except for like 100, and that little warehouse of 100 gets on a rocket ship and sends itself towards Mars or something. Because basically like this speed of light penalty makes keeping your copy of the blockchain and competitively like mining blocks, you incur a penalty the further distance from the center of hash you go. The center of hash used to be, I don't know, somewhere toward the center of Earth, maybe slightly tilted towards China. But since China like quote unquote like banned Bitcoin mining, all that hash power swung back so that the center of hash is now closer to somewhere between America and Kazakhstan, I would imagine, if you're looking on a 3D plane. So his piece is all about like, okay, so what now? Like you can use Bitcoin by virtue of holding some on Mars, and they'll surely value it because they can achieve final settlement. It doesn't matter if you have a time penalty, like if you have a little late version of the ledger, you can still achieve final settlement just by using Lightning and sending batch transactions back to Earth. Um, the interesting thing is there then becomes like political problems and a centralized point of failure for those batch Martian transactions due to just the nature, the expense of having signal transmission, like the receivers, like who owns them. It can get very politically weird. And so eventually, if enough people populate Mars, they're going to be incentivized to start their own Bitcoin, just like Bitcoin is now. And this is, I think Drew argues in the piece, it's been a long time since I read it, but I think he argues that like this is the only quote unquote like valid use case for blockchains outside of Bitcoin, which I mean, I'm inclined to agree with, because I can't think of another reason. You can still use Bitcoin on Mars, but eventually they're going to want to have their own. Yeah, Chris, like you said, by the time you receive a block, you'll be 45 minutes behind. This is because at the furthest distance, Mars is 22 light minutes from Earth. So there and back, 22, you're about 45 minutes. Could be nearer than that, but that's more than 10 minutes. So you're priced out of mining competitively. But basically, like the Martians will be incentivized to start their own chain. If you get more than 10 light minutes away, or maybe it's only 5, whoever's much beyond that will probably be incentivized to start their own coin that's based on Bitcoin. And then I don't know how the trade interoperates between those planets. I can't remember what his argument was, but this is like a classic piece of Bitcoin literature that everybody should read. I think it's called Bitcoin Astronomy. There would be an exchange rate between Martian coin and Bitcoin. Yeah, that's what I mean. There'll be an interesting trade dynamics there. Interesting war and revolution among the Martians trying to start their own chain. But the important takeaway from that piece is that all the other blockchains outside of Bitcoin are bullshit on Earth. There's no reason for them. There's no valid use case. They don't assure you of the same property rights. You will they might hold value in the sense that they'll always exist, but they've pretty much failed completely to establish a reason to exist and to differentiate themselves meaningfully from the price of Bitcoin. That's why when you see Bitcoin collapse, you see all these coins just fucking tank. They live or die on the coattails of Bitcoin, which, I mean, they haven't meaningfully distinguished themselves. Who knows whether they're here to stay? It's an interesting conversation. What do you think, Q? You've got a bit of a
I'm
open mind when it
absorbing
comes to these things.
I'm absorbing and digesting this. I mean, one thing that I always my first instinct whenever we talk about like what is life on Mars, what is life outside of Earth, um, how do we get there? How do we get the energy that we're using to actually? So I'm kind of curious as to like what those capacities are as well. And this is like off topic, but kind of on topic, meant to be fully comedic. Um, I always have an issue with this idea that once we start exploring space, everyone is a rocket engineer all of a sudden and like can handle like the nuances of like whatever glitch goes on in your spaceship, in the way that it's depicted in any sort of space sci-fi movie or
Oh,
TV
yeah,
show.
yeah.
But then like here on Earth, like I don't know, more than half the people can't change a flat tire if it happened to them.
Well,
So
listen to that. Like, I don't know that what the difference, the meaningful difference will be between like very hyper realistic virtual reality inhabiting sort of robots that live on Mars and actually living on Earth. You know what I mean? Because it's not that long before people already spend like a meaningful amount of their lives like in the virtual world, like not engaging with their physical surroundings. There's no reason they can't just be on a different planet doing that.
yeah,
And actually meaningfully be there in mind, in body. It's very like we've become cyborgs in a way.
no, you're not wrong. I mean, this goes back a little bit to the conversation that I was having last week with Timothy Allen, and just like this idea that like we have so much already available to us as far as virtual reality goes. Like, why would we not? Like the notion that the way we are interacting, right? Like this is virtual reality to a degree, but like why would we not believe that like the reality in which we live in like could very well just be a computer program? Like I shared my experience of the first time I put on an Oculus headset, and like in my head, I knew I am on the floor at sea level in Best Buy, and
Yeah.
yet based on like what I was just seeing through these goggles, I genuinely thought I was 500 feet up in the middle of the air above Machu Picchu, and like my fear of heights just fully kicked in that moment. Um, so
Yeah, I no, I like that conversation. I mean, I agree with you. There's like a really good probabilistic argument that we're in a simulation. It would actually like account for why we're having such a weird time finding any other signal out there, or why there's like really weird quirks that we can't explain. There's kind of weird quirks to it too. Like in order to generate a simulation, there's no evidence like outside of like my immediate experience that you even exist as a consciousness. You know what I mean? This just could be like one ancestral simulation. And then like how this gets back to Bitcoin is probably the best possibility that we have for incentivizing artificial intelligence and incentivizing like the value accretion of like robots and technology to actually like break free of our simulation and go on sort of like a Matrix X campaign to like liberate our actual flesh suits, which are probably more like cyber suits somewhere. You
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
like that is like you just described the demise and downfall of humanity, but sure, yeah, I'm with you. You're not wrong in what you described. I was one of my thoughts too when I brought up sort of like the idea of like how did we get there? Like how do we build up this community in Mars to then like start to have the conversation around like let's mine Bitcoin? In my mind, I envision candidly like almost 90 to 99% of anything being built on Mars or the moon specifically being done fully automated. It's going to be done
Yeah.
remote machinery. If it has to be sort of, if there has to be a human touch, human element, there may come a time where we send people there to handle that. But until we get there, I would anticipate, and just sort of my expectations are, we need Elon to give us the iRobot robots that he's working on, and then we can start worrying about like building out facilities.
See,
And
I was gonna bring this back too. I don't think we'll get there in our lifetime. Definitely not in Elon's lifetime. This guy looks unhealthy as
interesting.
shit. But like I don't think I'm just saying, I don't think Elon's gonna get us to Mars, guys. We don't have sound money. We can barely put together a meaningful society on Earth that isn't like Literally insane. Like if you just look at how the United States, at any of these countries are functioning, their leaders, their organization, their ability to execute meaningful scientific projects. Did we go to the moon? Did we not? I don't know. It doesn't really seem like it. But like, um, I
I want to
I I
stress.
I
Sorry.
don't believe that we'll be going to Mars anytime soon.
Um,
Without Bitcoin. Bitcoin's our only hope to get off this planet. It's the only way we can fund and coordinate projects of value is by having a monetary system that has like incentives that are actually like going to help us progress and collaborate as a society, as opposed to this like really divisive situation.
right, but I would argue that given the current state of Bitcoin versus just centralized governments right now, rather than like nation state versus nation state, I like to look at it through the lens of like Bitcoin versus centralized governments. We're still in a battle here on Earth. So like I think we're a lot of steps away from getting to that reality that you're sort of discussing. I
Mm-hmm.
want to stress and emphasize this for those of you who are watching. We are dead sober. I was told not to smoke weed, so I have not yet smoked the joint that I
That's
continue
not
to.
true. I told you to smoke the joint.
Right.
We can take a poll.
YouTube's terms and agreements told me not to smoke the weed on camera. But if you like this type of like really
Can you
high
smoke
outlet,
Delta 9 on camera?
dude, I will never touch Delta 9 again. It was the lamest, dumbest thing that was ever invented strictly to keep hemp farmers active when in fact the hemp industry would have just made the paper industry obsolete. It was like the natural course of evolution as far as the industrial uh, age goes. And yet you have lobbyists essentially lobbying against the elimination of paper and focus on hemp. And as a result, now all these hemp farmers in random states are like, wait, you can't get rid of us now and circumvent us to go to THC. Like we still exist.
Well, bring your THC to the Bitcoin 2022 conference. 21% off with promo code YTMAG. We're stressing on this today, guys, because this is the last day, and you don't realize we're trying to give you hundreds of dollars off your tickets, and you're not buying the tickets. We need someone to buy it on stream so we can give you guys some sats back as well. So, yeah, go get your tickets now. Come hang out with Q. If you get your tickets on air, we'll personally, I don't know, put you on an episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live.
Dude, if someone buys a ticket right now and then comments and like shows us that they bought the ticket right now, I will roll us a fatty in Miami. Just you and me. Just you and me, one fatty. You have my word.
I'm checking to see if they bought their tickets. I don't know. If you want to buy at a higher price, that's cool with us too, but I would recommend you use the discount code
We're trying to give you the
YTMAG.
homie discount. It's literally going to go from 21% off to 10% off tomorrow. Like if you're going back and forth, this is going to be a moment where you're genuinely going to regret that 11% hike up that you're going to feel tomorrow. So just do it.
Yeah, when you could be stacking sats at these prices too, man, it's so cheap. What do you think? What's the near term? What's the price gonna do? How are we feeling today?
I haven't. To be honest, I did not do enough of my on-chain readings over the weekend, or as much
Do
as
you
I would
have
have
to
liked.
do the on-chain readings? Do you have a gut feel? I
Oh,
just go off gut feel.
I mean, like my gut feel and like my gut feel will always just say, "Oh, it's gonna go up." So like I try to not necessarily focus heavily on that until I have like some sort of input variables to help me decide, and things like hash rate, things like sort of the on-chain or Bitcoins on exchanges versus being sent to cold storage wallets. Those things I do like to just like monitor and see how they trend. But my biggest indicator is the fear and greed index. Shout out Andy Edstrom. I learned this by attending one of your Bitcoin meetups, like my first ever Bitcoin meetup. And we were having a large conversation, and one of the guys at the table was genuinely like, I honestly, the only thing I do is fear and greed index. Anytime it's like an extreme fear, I just smash by like as much as possible. But then other than that, I just let it ride. And I have definitely adopted something like that. You'll see. Don't go through my entire Twitter history. You'll not be happy with some of my tweets, but like there are moments where anytime over the last year it went into extreme fear, I would just be like, buy signal.
Q has like the most probably like the most underrated and one of the smallest Bitcoin Twitter accounts out there. So you guys got to all go follow Q. What are you up to right now?
In life, on Twitter.
On Twitter.
On Twitter right now.
Yeah.
I'm focused honestly on blowing up the video Bitcoin Twitter handle, but
Good,
also
good.
like low-key have aspirations to, like, I don't know, have a more than triple digits on my Twitter followers. So help your boy get there.
Yeah, go follow Chris too.
Yeah, make sure you
We'll put
also
their...
follow our producer Chris, who has twice as many followers than me. But I always...
and go follow. Oh, I'm really excited to announce we got Mark Goodwin in the chat. Mark is our newest. This is an example. You come to the Bitcoin live show, you hang out with us, you hang out in the chat, we get you a job. We got Mark is joining us at Bitcoin Magazine. This is so exciting. I believe as a creative lead, big idea man for the physical magazine, and he's like probably the most uber qualified person to do that job ever. So we're super excited to have Mark Goodwin. We're gonna have him on the show for sure this week. He doesn't realize it, but half of his new job is just gonna be joining us on the show.
he's already regretting watching the stream now.
Yeah, and share the stream with your friends and family, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're gonna have CJ Wilson on here in any minute now. Actually, we've done an hour already. We're gonna have CJ Wilson on. He's gonna be at the conference for sure. I don't know what his role will be, if he'll be speaking or doing a live pod there, but really excited to talk to him. Yeah, like, subscribe, share the stream with your friends, get your conference tickets so we can all hang out together in Miami. It's gonna be nice. What's the word, Q?
The bird. The bird is the word.
What equities are you thinking about this week?
Right now, to be honest with you, I am not looking at anything tech related. I dipped into some steel stocks last week and I was really happy about that. So I'm kind of...
What do you mean some steel stocks?
Like literal steel, like the metal steel.
Because of, do you look at like supply chain stuff, or what makes you want to buy a steel stock?
I've been following the steel markets for a little less than a year now, very closely. And there's been a nice little ebb and flow that sort of counteracts tech stocks, where as tech sort of declines and you see more traditional, I won't spend too much time on this, but it's kind of been like a nice little hedge that I've been using, and it's worked out well so far. But that does kind of mean that I empty the tech and go heavy on precious metals like that for the time being.
Interesting. Well, it looks like we've got CJ Wilson with us today. I almost didn't let him in the room. I didn't realize your first name was Chris. I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah, Chris Wilson, regular white guy at your service.
What's happening, CJ?
Anonymity is hiding in plain sight.
You at the dealership? How's it going?
It's a little bit difficult with inventory right now, but I just got delivery of our new book. I got a stack of books back here, so I can be like all those other podcasters and, impress people with my thing. So I'll just put my, I got like my bullish case thing here, and I got my S9 here, that I just, as a conversation.
Oh, that's new. You didn't have that last time I talked to you. Are you gonna plug that thing in?
In a different office, I think. I have a different office where I actually have like a full-on setup, but today's a little bit of a mess. So last day of the month is always wacky with car dealerships.
Interesting. I like that. You got the Unchained Cap merch too. That's nice.
Gotta represent,
man.
Love that. Well, let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be joined and have a nice little segment here with all-star pitcher CJ Wilson.
Welcome back, guys. CJ, are you going to bring a convoy of Porsches to the Bitcoin 2022 conference?
Well, it's too far of a drive. I'm in California, so shipping a bunch of cars across the country would be a little bit cost prohibitive. Although with the car shortage, it actually might not be that bad now that I'm thinking about it compared to renting a car. So I'll have to actually do the math on that. If they were like, hey, you have to go through these flaming hoops of death to get on a plane. I might just pull, the cannonball run across the country if that was the case. So I do have a couple fun cars that I would be willing to drive out there.
If you need a driver for another car, I am just north of you over in the South Bay. So I'll gladly drive one of those cars across country for you.
There we go.
Well, we're joined by two-time MLB All-Star pitcher CJ Wilson, formerly of the Texas Rangers and Anaheim Angels. Thank you so much for joining us, man. And despite, your past life working extensively in baseball, both as a player, as well as the work you do out afterwards, you are very much involved in the Bitcoin community. And we just, love to hear the story of how you first got introduced to Bitcoin and what was your first gut reaction to it? Were you open and receptive, or were you just sort of like, what is this fake internet money that you're talking about that's going to just like make me lose all my investments?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I had heard about Bitcoin was probably 2013 through like the Silk Road stuff. And I think the Silk Road thing was the first time that I had heard about Bitcoin as a sort of payments use case. I'd always been a kind of hard money, hard asset advocate because I had seen people get wrecked in the stock market in like 99, 2000 and like the dot-com bust. And then I was actually, I forget where I was. I think I was at a restaurant or something like that. And I was in Austin and I had just put a deposit down on a condo in Austin. And it was going to be like new construction, like getting in. And it was like this whole Ponzi scheme of like, oh, people buy in and then phase 2 is more expensive and then phase 3 is more expensive and that whole thing. And I already had a condo in Dallas and I had a condo in LA, or not LA, but Huntington Beach where I like lived in the off season. And I was like, yeah, I could get condos everywhere, rent them out, this whole thing. And then like the waitress was like, oh, I got 3 deposits on condos. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So that's when I realized that the economy was like maybe a little bit overheated and everyone was sort of FOMOing in. And I pulled all my money out of all the equity markets at that point. And this was like in like late 2007. And the market continued to rise at that point. And I was just like this, sitting on the sidelines. And I had started buying silver and gold at that point because I was like, hey, if the economy melts down, and I was living in Texas. So, I had all these people that were like, oh man, they're going to kick out Bush. He's going to be done. We're going to get a goddamn Democrat. It's going to be crazy. And like, it's all going to go to shit. So I was buying like guns and bullets and, whatever people do in Texas. And yeah. And then when the economy melted down, my buying power went up because my salary went up. And so I was like, oh, well, this gold thing actually worked out really well, so that was all before Bitcoin, right? So then I found out about Bitcoin like 2013, and I didn't really connect the hard money aspect of it because I didn't know that there was a limit on the supply. No one that had told me about it was like, oh, there's only 21 million. So I was just like, oh, well, dudes just like print this money and buy drugs with it and hookers on like Silk Road. That sounds kind of sketchy. I don't know if I really want to get involved with that. And I didn't have any like buddies that were really like computer internet guys or anything like that. So I didn't have anybody really like saying, oh, go to GitHub, you can read this and da da da. I didn't have any of that action going on. So I didn't actually get into Bitcoin till later, till after 28. So the 2018 drop, and that's when everything kind of slammed down. And obviously it was national news when it hit 10,000, 20,000, whatever. So when it came down, I was like very skeptical of it. But then I was curious because I was like, wow, it survived all this time. I remember hearing about it years ago when it was nothing, it wasn't worth anything. And now it's worth a lot. And then I bought some and then started reading more about it. And then that's when I started like really doing a little bit more of a deep dive. And I would say, just like anybody else, as your knowledge base increases, your confidence increases in the action that you take. So it's like you read a book and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You read a couple of blogs, you're like, maybe I can put some more money in this. And then you start kind of diverting capital that would have gone towards maybe equity investments or, you know, a rental house or something like that. And then you're just kind of plowing that into Bitcoin. And now I'm just a fixed part of my budget every month on salary is just putting money using Strike and just automatically depositing into Bitcoin.
You heard that. Even MLB legend CJ Wilson is every single day, every single paycheck stacking sats. So all you plebs out there watching, be sure to do the same. I woke up this morning and did a mini stack like I do every day. So curious to know a little bit about sort of what, and I've had this conversation with a couple other athletes, what is offered by the Players Association to MLB players in particular, as far as like investment advice or investment criteria. I know that recently there was a push in the NFL to have like the financial advisors all get accredited, and same with the NBA. Is there any sort of policy structure like that with the MLB Players Association?
Yeah, I think like, so what we had set up when I was playing, and we had negotiated for this in like the collective bargaining thing, so it was something that was there, was the players check a box at the beginning of the year, and then they get an automatic portion of their salary put into a Vanguard 401k thing. And then because of what we've negotiated with the owners have to match that. So if a player puts in 10 or 20 grand a year, the owners are matching 10 or 20 grand a year or whatever. So when I was in my heyday, I was stacking up 30, 40 grand or whatever it was a year into that account. And then obviously within that account, you can buy different mutual funds and stuff. And so you have like a chance to kind of get educated on it. Now, there's enough dumb players out there that would say, oh, I don't want to put any money in. And I would say, hey, if you can't make it on $390,000 as a rookie, you can't make it on 400 either. You know what I mean? Like if that $10,000 at that price point is really going to mess up your life, then you're not only retarded, but you're also, you know, you're shooting yourself in the nuts, because you're probably not smart enough to survive baseball and then have money coming in when you're, you know, 42 or whatever. But you have to think about it this way too. So baseball players also get a pension. So like when I turn 54 or 53 or something like that, like I'll be eligible to receive my pension early. Now, because I played for 10 years, I qualify for the max pension. So if I waited till I was like 63 or something like that, it would be roughly $200,000 a year. But if I took it when I was like 54 and a half or something like that, it'd be like 120. Well, it like makes more sense to take the money now or as early as possible, because like, you know, that way you're starting from up here by the time that other one comes in. And I think a lot of players just sort of try to survive until they can get to the point that they have a pension. Which is a terrible strategy as well, because realistically, most players' careers are done by the time they're 30 to 33 years old, if they last at all in the majors. And then that's if they're bouncing in the majors and minors. So for me, I retired at 36. And so, you know, I had 16 or 18 years or whatever for me to hit that window. But I immediately began working. And by working immediately in the car business, it gave me a salary and a chance to like learn a new skill all at the same time. Which gives me more optionality as I go. So there are programs, they're all voluntary, and a lot of players are like, oh, I'll worry about that later. And that's the biggest problem, is that your salary goes from here and then zero. So, you know, what I tried to do with the car dealership thing was, while I was playing, I started investing in car dealerships and in other investments and doing little venture things here and there, 20 grand, 50 grand, whatever. And then, you know, so trying to match, you know, have it so that when my salary fell off a cliff, there was a little bit of a budget there, like a little bit of a balance for me to catch myself with. Because it's very easy to get caught up in the fact that you're making, you know, 7 figures or something like that. And then you start spending like you're making, you know, 10 figures, because everybody around you is like, yo, man, you need to get that new thing. And it's like, yo, man, you don't need to get that new thing, because that one thing now will cost you. And I didn't really, part of me was like, okay, well, I'm going to make some responsible investments. I did some real estate and, you know, things like that. And then part of me was like, hey, I'm young. I need to enjoy this stuff while I have the reflexes to do it. Because one day when I'm a dad or grandpa or whatever, if I'm driving the you know, the Carrera GT around when I'm 75, I'll probably kill myself, because I won't have the reflexes to control the car. But also, you know, I'd like to get it out of the way just in case my wife like throws the axe through that idea. And so my wife happens to like cars, so it's kind of all worked out. But I actually sold off a bunch of cars because I don't have the time to drive them. And I'd rather have that money in Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining, investing in Unchained Capital or Swan or some of these other opportunities that I've had to do over the years. And I feel better about having money, you know, and then having people like Joe Kelly and Parker Lewis and Will Cole grow a company, you know, and I have nothing to do with it other than just using the service. I feel better about that than I do one extra car in the driveway, if that makes sense.
I got a quick question for you. So what's changed since the last time I spoke to you? I don't know if you were interested in mining or just getting started, and what way are you engaging in that right now?
So right now, I would say I have a 7-figure investment in a mining setup. You know, I have like a nat gas oil wells mining setup in Texas, and then I'm going to be doing some stuff like in different places. I actually started a company recently called Model, which is Mining on Demand Limited. So the idea was to have a decentralized mining setup. So I made small deals with different like hosting locations so that I could have different machines in different places. So that way, like if a tornado comes through like it did in Kentucky or something like that, that I don't have my entire operation down and not mining. So I would have like, you know, 20 miners in somewhere, 20 miners somewhere else, 50 miners over here, 60 miners over there, and just kind of, and as I get more revenue in, the idea is growing that pile of ASICs, you know. So we did like a small friends and family round, and then I'm going to probably do a bigger company later with the idea that it's better access than people trying to buy miners themselves, because they don't really, you can't scale by yourself. It's very expensive. But if I can sell someone like like the equivalent of like worth 5 miners, then they're going to get a percentage of that total thing. So if we raise enough money for 100 miners and you contributed 5 worth, then you get 5% of whatever the take is. And then having something kind of like that, you know, to be a bigger company, which is sort of like my experience from using Compass and some of these other, you know, these other entities that are basically like selling mining as like a decentralized thing. It's possible. It's just not, it's like, it's just different. And when you have access directly to get ASICs for a better price, you know, you take a swing and you buy a bunch of them, and then suddenly you're getting the emails, you're getting them offered for like the real price, not the you know, plugged in tomorrow for $17,000 price, which is a little bit excessive, I think, in a lot of ways.
I'm kind of curious on this decentralized mining company, because you and forgive me if I missed this, but you only mentioned cities and states in America. Is there intention of expanding that, or are there limitations to having like the network be globally secured so that you don't have to worry about the US government deciding tomorrow, hey, Bitcoin mining, we're done, or what happened in China last year?
Right. I mean, I would say that, like, you know, there's always opportunities to throw money into you know, into people that are mining in very different Eastern European places like Kazakhstan or, you know, Russia or, you know, somewhere like that. But I don't know if I would be comfortable with that. I mean, the narratives that are coming out from some of these places is, it's like the classic, like, I just imagine Nick Carter having steam blowing out of his head, you know, as people are saying, oh, no, now it uses too much renewable energy. You know, somebody like Norway or Sweden or something like that recently said, now it's using too much renewable and we need that renewable energy for this other stuff. It's like, yo, man, like, what is it? Like, can we use renewable or not? And I think, you know, having a little bit more insight into what happens in the domestic policy here gives me a little bit more confidence when you have people like, you know, Cruz and Cornyn and Abbott in Texas basically saying, hey, we like Bitcoin. It's like, all right, cool. So I feel comfortable spending money on Bitcoin mining in Texas. I feel comfortable spending money on Bitcoin mining in, you know, in Kentucky, because Rand Paul is like a pretty straight up guy. Wyoming, because of Lummis, you know, so like you have these sort of, it's just like any other sector investment. If you're going to make an investment into a company and you heard this rumor that the CEO is throwing boonga boonga parties, you know, and like this crazy shit, and he's like, you know, doing shrooms and like whatever, you're like thinking maybe this guy's not ready for NASDAQ, you know, and you don't want to necessarily put your money there. So I think it's the same way. You have to evaluate the legislative process and the energy costs and the likelihood of natural disasters and all these other things with when you spend money. If you're spending 10, 20, 30, 100 grand at a time, you know, why are you going to put stuff in Georgia versus, you know, versus New York or whatever? New York's constantly trying to ban things. So I wouldn't feel good about putting miners in New York right now personally, because I don't live there and it'd be hard for me logistically to kind of get there.
That makes total sense to me. I mean, you kind of touch on a little bit between, the political landscape, the environmental landscape, the energy costs. Are there other factors that you're sort of considering when deciding where you want to open up a new mining entity, if you will?
Yeah, so I think a big thing that I'm debating right now is the percentage of on versus off grid as the mix, for how we're sourcing or where we're placing ASICs. The biggest thing is, and then immersion as well. That's a big one. So as the hash rate globally goes up, you're going to have to do something to combat, that to get more yield for your dollar. And really, like the immersion systems tend to be pretty stabilizing. They keep the miners, I've been doing a lot of research on this and stuff. They keep the miners a lot more functional and healthy over that lifespan. And then at the end of the day, like if you're amortizing these miners out, so they have like, let's say a 10 to 16 month payback period, depending on what the price of Bitcoin is. If you can get an extra 3, 4, 8, 10, 12 months of effective hashing out of these things because you're running them in immersion, then it's like, that's just a much bigger, that's a much bigger pool of Bitcoin at the end of the day. And I think it's very difficult to earn Bitcoin, like through a job or something like that. I mean, the best case that a lot of us have is just converting a lot of our salary into Bitcoin directly, right? So the way I explain it to people, especially guys, like I have a lot of farmer clients that are here in Fresno. And when we talk about this type of stuff, we do meetups or barbecues or whatever, I say, listen, like, okay, today's price, I'm looking at it, it's like $38,630. Like that's what Bitcoin is literally right now. It's like a nice green wick for, up about $1,000, $1,500 in the last, like couple hours or whatever, right? But if I was able to effectively mine Bitcoin for $18,000 per Bitcoin, then that would be obviously a much better deal. And so it's just about having a different time preference, because you can, if you have a bunch of money in your hand, if you have 50 grand right now, you can buy 50 grand worth of Bitcoin today, or you can buy like 5 ASICs, and 5 ASICs will eventually, if you get enough revenue in, you could turn those 5 ASICs into 7 ASICs or something like that. And then there's a sort of curve there where it makes sense. The problem is that you can't do that at home in California, because California residential electricity is like 30 to 40 cents, which is criminal. It's awesome though that Gavin Newsom's at the games hanging out, at the NFC Championship game yesterday. But so the thing is that if you have a place where you can get 5, 6, 7 cent power or less, then it really does make sense to mine, especially if you can kind of co-op and you can take a whole container with you and your friends, because then you have this sort of an operation. But if you just have 5, you don't need a container if you just have 5 of them, you know what I mean? And so that's where there's this gap between the really well-funded miners, the Riots, the Marathons, the Rhodiums, people like that, and then the CJs, and trying to get to that point where, okay, I have to think what's going to get me to 70 miners in a digital shovel unit, or a, sorry, oh my God, Adam's going to kill me, upstream data in an upstream data setup, right? If you have enough to get in one of those upstream data setups, and there's like a critical mass, right? If you only have half of them, then you're not really there yet. So you almost have to wait till you have enough money. But then, so there's a lot of stuff that's still, I would say, very nascent and needs development, for instance, like loans and stuff, because effectively these miners are creating income. And I've talked to Unchained for like the last 7 months. I'm like, dude, can you guys just get like a specific ASIC loan program? And, because I think that would be great. But, that still doesn't really exist. So you have to go get like a SoFi loan or like some other thing and like cobble together, the money in order to do it. But you really do need, right now, I think about $500,000 to kind of get a mining operation started, just to start one. Otherwise, you're just a sort of a hobbyist miner, and then you're better off with like the sort of, it's okay if you're an oil producer or something and you have like the upstream data, like little, Chevy V8 running like 8 miners or something like that. But it's difficult for a lot of people to do that at home. But Bitcoin, as long as you have a good miner, if you have an S19 or like the new What's miner, 90 terahashes or whatever, you can actually kind of like outperform the cost of electricity. So you just have to be greedy and try to make a little bit while there's some to be made, before Saylor buys it all up.
I think not only is Saylor going to buy it all up, but you kind of touch on the fact that, today, right now in 2022, it's going to cost you $500,000 to really start up your own mining facility capabilities to keep up with these big dogs. These big dogs aren't just like sitting still. I think Marathon and Riot both have intentions of increasing their hash rate almost 10x this for by the end of this year. Like that level of growth, where, how do individual miners who maybe don't necessarily have had the experience or the income levels of an MLB pitcher, how do they get started? You also touched on a little bit about the fact that, you know, the access to mining equipment, the cost of this mining equipment is already so astronomically high. Like what are the new possibilities other than joining a mining pool?
Right. So I think there's ways of taking what I would call like you can redirect your energy use at home, right? So let's say you live in Idaho, and you know, because Idaho is largely a hydropower state, I think they have like 100 waterfalls or 140 power plant waterfalls or something like that. So they have power that's sort of 9 to 12 cents. So if you can go on the internet and you go to Kaboom Racks or one of these other, you know, people that's selling miners, you can get maybe 2 or 3 of these things, and you can set it up at home in a sort of like homemade enclosure. Now, in mining is still like mining at home is very much, I would say, like early days, in the same sense that before Ledger, you had to have a wallet, you know, running on your laptop or something like that, right? They didn't have like the sort of the level of hardware wallets that and phone wallets today is like, you know, 50x what they had, you know, 10 years ago in Bitcoin, right? So in the same sense, like there's these different things coming out, like Upstream has the black box coming out, or you can basically like plug 2 S19s in and like have it sitting outside your house and lock it, and no one really knows what's happening. You know, like you don't tell your neighbors or whatever, and you just have your own little mining thing happening, right? And if you're mining and you have 2 S19s running, so let's say, you know, 180 or 200 terahashes, you know, going, you're going to get Bitcoin yield. Now, the question is, can you take it to the next step, like Coinheated, the guy in Minnesota, and can you use some of that heat that's being generated and then like heat your water, heat your pool, you know, create a box where you're heating your clothes, and then instead of running a dryer, you're just using the ASICs to dry your clothes. I mean, there's like these other things that you can kind of DIY combine and use sort of caveman tech, which is basically a heat source. And then like what needs a heat source, you know? Do you need a heat source at home? And then like, how do you work that with some copper tubing and some, you know, heat exchangers? You see there's guys online that are doing this already, right? So there's guys online that are doing this type of stuff. And I think if you're looking at it, the net cost of heating your house, you know, and it is like whatever. And if you can absorb that and get paid in Bitcoin to do it, then it makes sense to try these different ways of doing it, especially if you're at that sort of 6 to 12 cent residential power, and you have like one miner or something like that. But it really is the case where you have to do the research yourself to find the source of the ASICs, because if you just FOMO into a purchase on an ASIC and you pay $17,000 for something that's hosted in Vladivostok or something like that, okay, that might be great in terms of the fact that it's online today, but you know, the payback period now is like 24 months on that thing, as opposed to 16 or 12 or whatever else. So you have to search. And so just doing a little bit of research on where to buy these things is actually one of the best things you can do. And trying to find the better price is actually you're going to get yourself a better deal all the time, you know. And then the $8,000 or $5,000 you save or whatever it is, that really becomes like it's hard to make $5,000 with Bitcoin mining. You know, it's a couple petahashes collectively, you know, over a fixed period of time to do that. So that being said, I do think it is the most fascinating thing, because it does actually add to the network, and it does strengthen your connection to the network as well, which I think there's this whole thing about people that say, oh, you know, you're making the network more secure or whatever, but it's more your security that you're concerned with. And that's the whole beauty of what Satoshi has done with Bitcoin, which was to like bank on the fact that people are selfish and they're going to be self-incentivized, and like not like this holistic, like, oh, you're going to have a pet tiger, but he's going to be vegan, and like, you know, you're going to walk in the field and there'll be geese everywhere, and like not this dream world, you know, that a lot of these people are trying to sell. A bunch of these hippie, you know, World Economic Forum cucks, like they're trying to sell that stuff. Like that's not reality. The reality is that you need to protect yourself because someone is trying to jack you, and that's what the banking system is, and that's what all these other systems are. That's what if you're a small business owner, that's what the Visa network is. It's trying to jack me for 2% every time someone wants to buy something, you know. So I would rather have the money go to Square and use Cash App or something, or Spiral or Block or whatever it's called these days, whatever geometric shape Jack has taken. in the metaverse, you know, but I would rather have them make money versus Visa, because I feel like they're providing a real service, you know. And so there's like these things that happen, but it's really mining connects you to the network, which makes your connection to Bitcoin stronger, which makes your knowledge base stronger and makes your conviction stronger, you know, and all that stuff.
Oh, I love that. I mean, you bring up now two examples of the way creation and invention has happened within Bitcoin mining in particular. With upstream, you see them really capitalize and utilize this excess energy in the natural gas mining process that was just wasted. I was explaining this to my cousin yesterday. He didn't believe me that A, this technology existed, B, that we just accepted energy waste for how long, and that only now have we just started to like capitalize on that. We also have the example up in Minnesota where, and I know Dylan LeClaire has brought it up with his family over in Vermont. I know Hut 8 uses their mining rigs as essentially in-house heaters. What are other advancements, or what are things you want to see? I personally would love to see the lack of access of the clean energy that is collected in certain areas not being able to be spread far enough. I'd love to see a way or a new system created that utilizes that energy for Bitcoin mining, however that is. Are there other technological advancements that you're looking for specifically for mining in that capacity?
Yeah, so I think like, you know, seeing what Slush does with Braiins software. So Braiins software is like, it boosts your efficiency, right? So if you're buying a 100 terahash unit and then you can run Braiins on it and go to 130 terahashes, you know, that's a massive deal, because then you're spending the same amount of electricity, but then you're getting more hash out of it, right? So if you do that with immersion, now all of a sudden you're running like 150 terahashes or something like that, and you might even be running less energy because you're not using fans. So because you're not using the fans, you're using less energy, and you could have a system where, like on a big enough scale, or on a collective scale, you have people that are using like a little windmill on top of their house and a little like in a black pipe with that just gets sun on it, and that heat differential and the wind, you know, and that affects as a, you know, as a dry cooler for an immersion setup or whatever else, and you just have this whole heat pump. Eventually we'll have what I like to call active respiration on buildings, where we're going to have construction that instead of having a boiler in the basement, which one of my really good friends is a guy in Oklahoma that built the boiler that like is the, if you've ever seen the solar farm that has all the mirrors that focuses the boiler, he's the guy that built that. Okay.
Oh, no
So
shit.
like we talk about like boiler technology. He has a very nice Ferrari collection. Okay, I'll just throw that out there. But the you know, you're going to have people like that like kind of cropping up in the Bitcoin space, taking what effectively is a very old technology, was to say boilers, but then, you know, basically taking mirrors. So not using solar cells, which are most of the time mined using like, you know, rare earth metals and like slave labor and child labor and stuff like that, which is a great thing. If anybody's watching and doesn't know that, you should look that up, because solar panels are kind of a sham. All right. But if you have them, if you're using mirrors and boilers to make electricity, and that's like a much better way of creating electricity than solar panels, right? There's going to be a version of that for Bitcoin mining, where we're going to take heat and we're going to have mirrors or some sort of heat collection device, and that heat collection device is going to force water through a system, which is going to power a wheel, which is going to generate electricity. So just sort of the opposite thing. There's no reason for us not to do that. And I think as we sort of upscale the grid, we're going to have buildings that are actively using exterior like pipes to cool. And it might be a little bit more of a, I'm trying to think of the right way, like more of like a Bauhaus design, as opposed to like this sort of sleek Westworld, you know, twisty glass or something like that visual of the future. I do think that there's going to be a lot more industrial design towards like cooling and heating, you know, as people start complaining more and more about the use of electricity for, you know, air conditioning and stuff like that. Just by moving water around the building using like a gray water setup or whatever, you know, you're going to have a lot better use of energy and efficiency. And it just forces us to be creative, to say, hey, let's do a creative look at this. We have a need. Our need is more power from more people, right? We have more people, they need more food, they need more water, they need more power. That's just how society evolves. So are we going to do nuclear? Are we going to like, are people going to kind of change their mind and come back to nuclear, which is the cleanest energy source, like net? Smaller nuclear reactors, you know, portable nuclear reactors, nuclear reactors on demand, you know, power on demand. I mean, effectively, these Bitcoin mines, a lot of them are just in containers, which means they can just go on a truck and just drive somewhere And so you're going to have this whole like pioneering spirit for Bitcoin miners where they're going to be like, hey man, you got any extra megawatts? And then they're going to like take these containers and plug them into these places that might be building the power infrastructure for like a new community, but nobody lives there yet. So they're effectively, you know, the Bitcoin miners are going to pay for the power before anybody lives there. And then people are going to move there, you know, and the Bitcoin miners will be like, all right, peace, thanks. And they're going to move, then they're going to go somewhere else. Once they develop the base load or the capability for the base load, it's like it shortens the payback period for the power plant or for the municipality from like, you know, 20 years to maybe like 6 years or something like that, which places like West Virginia, they're looking at these types of things now. And I think that's where you have these states that are basically like Rust Belt states that are going to take a lot of money away from New York and California and places like that, because it's easier to innovate with a blank slate. And it's easier to innovate with if you have too much power, because then you could build a Bitcoin mining facility, a 3D printing facility, or any of these other things that are effectively like more automated and more futuristic, because there's nobody in the way. You know, there's nobody in the way of you doing that. It's not like you have to build like cars or physical things. You're taking raw materials and you're churning them into either a 3D printed thing or raw electricity and turning it into Bitcoin, which is money. And then that can be, you know, distributed across the planet. That's what I think.
No, I didn't know if Alex was going to jump in. I absolutely love that. I mean, you do an excellent job of not only explaining how Bitcoin is essentially the energy capture or the monetary value from energy capture, but walking us through, I think, different opportunities in that space. Those of you who are watching, like this industry is brand new and ripe with the opportunity for you to go about it in so many different directions. I do want to shift this conversation into a different direction. I know, CJ, you had some time to spend with Alex Gladstein down in DC, talking to different politicians. I had the opportunity to meet you very briefly at the end of the year, where we were sitting at the same table as Erica Rhodes. I was the jackass on the other side of the table. But I want to just hear from you about what you're optimistic about, what that conversation and opportunity with Gladstein in DC was like for you, and just overall, like what you, like, if you had the opportunity to just speak directly to political figures, like what is it that you want to see these politicians do, either get out of the way or what legislation help guide us to the direction you want to see?
Right. So it's very complicated, because if you think of the nature of Bitcoin and how it started, Bitcoin was started like as a sort of as a completely independent movement because of frustration with the political connection to the banking regime, right? So I think the banking regime has this sort of like cloak over everybody in DC, or at least a lot of people. And I think that's the reason why you've seen these monetary policies come out, where people are basically encouraged to spend more money than they have, because that's how they win votes, right? And that's sort of, so you're adding these elements together. And then you have these people that like Steve Mnuchin or whatever that are working at these big investment banks that get hired to be in the cabinet, you know, of Trump or anybody else. And it doesn't matter what party you're with, right? It's all the same, meaning like there's like this vase, you know, containing all of the political and power. And then the bank is the one sort of like stuffing it with money and then keeping it sort of secure from the inside in that regard. But what happens is they've put so much money into it that the seams of the vase are starting to like burst open, because there's pressure now from this monetary supply going up. And what that does is it actually fractures the connection that people have to logic. Okay, so people like used to say, all right, well, you know, we have the GDP and that's like we're producing X amount of goods and we're going to sell those goods to the world or to ourselves. And now it's to the point that there's all this like quote fiscal policy where, you know, they're using the dollar to basically create these loans through the IMF and all this other stuff. And then you've seen basically El Salvador take a chisel to that and just go boop and just like break it wide open, right? So that chisel of truth, which is to say that if you are using Bitcoin, you can be much more independent from like the overlords, right? And if the IMF wants to say something negative to you, you can throw them a finger. You could change the name of the country to El Hadlador if you want to, right? Like whatever. So the thing is that there are some politicians that are fiscally conservative, right? Regardless of politically conservative. Let's just talk about fiscally conservative versus fiscally liberal. Fiscally liberal is when you have people that say, oh, you know what we need to do is I need to invent a new program that doesn't exist. Like all these other programs that exist and a lot of them don't work. We're not going to fix those. We're just going to make new programs constantly and just add more largesse. And that's the MMT thing. That's the Stephanie Kelton modern monetary theory, where it's to say like, oh, we'll just print ourselves out of any problem, or we'll just create new problems that printing is the only thing it can solve. But then the systemic shock that happens to that through whether it's the bond market or the stock market or the housing market or this other things, that's where people really get affected. So I think there's some people like Lummis or like Ron Paul that have sort of like towed the line to say, I am fiscally conservative and I'm not going to go for that BS, right? I'm just not going to fall for that crap. And then as that grows, you have a sort of like mathematically, it's like you're squaring things, right? So you have the concept of one, and then it's like one and like a bunch of zeros and then one, right? And that's like one person above like taking a better idea, right? And that one person somehow then there's like 1.11. Then, eventually a lot of churning is happening sort of underneath the big number. So no one really sees anything changing. And I think this is where a lot of the Bitcoin people have a hard time, because they're like, oh, we need to see things done now, because effectively with digital stuff, you can just reprogram something or remask it or rewrite it or, version 2.0, and then it's done. It's changed. Everybody accepts this new change. Hey, we have Taproot. That whole process is very short. Whereas with the government, you have like human beings that have interests, special interests, personal interests, all this other thing. You got Nancy Pelosi trading nonstop, just stonks, just crushing it, and insider trading or whatever. So it's very complicated to break that out. So eventually what has to happen is you need candidates like Erica Rhodes, you need people like Robbie Starbuck, you need people like Warren Davidson and Cynthia Lummis, and you need people that get it at the end of the day. You need Blake Masters from Arizona. You need these guys that are basically running, that have a really deep knowledge of the fact that something is broken and that there is a solution. We don't have to like reinvent the wheel. We just have to adapt the better wheel. And I think that's what Bitcoin is. It's a better wheel system. And it's just more honest. The problem is a lot of people benefit from dishonesty. And so Bitcoiners are very skeptical when anybody wants to get involved. So, okay, that's the background. Gladstein is unbelievable. He is like he's the best speaker I've ever seen in person, in terms of connecting a humanistic emotional response to Bitcoin, because you have guys like Keiser and Saylor and, trying to like these big like whale guys, they're not necessarily like creating an emotional connection. They're creating maybe a triggering response where someone's getting really agitated or activated or hyped up or whatever. But Alex is like, okay, let's talk about this for a second. He's so calm. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to cut your arm off. Then I'm going to cut your leg off. I'm going to cut your foot off. I'm going to stab you in the neck. You're dead. You have no argument. Thank you for coming. And he does it in such like a smooth, professional way. It's so amazing. So he was talking about the human rights thing, and I was talking about the small business thing, and like we kind of came together on that topic when we talked to it was called the Financial Innovation Caucus. So it was members of House and Senate staff. So we had about 50, 60 people, something like that there, and then we each gave our own things and answered a bunch of questions from them. Prior to that, Jimmy Song and myself and Donna Riddell, Amanda Cavallari, Becca Rubenfeld, and I'm not sure if I'm leaving anybody out. I apologize, but we formed the Bitcoin Today Coalition, which is a nonprofit to specifically go to DC and educate people. So this was kind of like the first instance of that. So after that, we were really inspired. We had some conversations with people like Ted Cruz. We had some, people like advising us, like Parker Lewis or whatever, where they're like telling us, hey, XYZ, whatever. And then Jimmy came up with the idea. He said, hey, let's just write a book about this. Let's write a book that we can give to DC staffers, because that's what they need. They like reading. A lot of them are nerds. That's cool. We want to provide education for them. Hey, let's make a book that's easy to digest, a really short, like to the point thing. And a month and a half later, 2 months later, he had a cast of characters. He had Pete Rizzo and Lamar Wilson and Gary Leland and Charlene and all these other people. And we came together and wrote a book. And so now we're actually going to DC to do a book release party, and to sort of like, so it's been about 7 months, I think, since we started everything. And we're seeing like the cake is getting taller. There's more layers to the cake now. We have access to more people. We're meeting with different offices. They're asking us better questions about energy use and, illicit activity and, regulations and stuff like that. But it's like really, Bitcoin is going to be fine no matter what we say, what we do. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin does not need any of the 4 of us or any of the million of us or whatever, but what Bitcoin people, meaning us, what we need is we need legal protection from, I would say, bad actor government, right? And we need tax protection, we need, you know, all that other stuff. So a couple months ago, maybe Lummis's staff started working on this bill, and this bill is going to come out, and it is going to be like the, oh man, I don't even know what to call it. I don't know. It's going to be the Bitcoin of bills, you know, about Bitcoin. So it's going to have all these different layers, all these different solutions, all these different things. And one of my favorite things is it basically separates Bitcoin from shitcoins by, like, they want to have it so that the SEC and the CFTC don't have like so much dominion. So they're like, we just probably need a third thing. And the third thing is going to effectively act as a bouncer like this. So you come in, and if you're decentralized, you go to the Bitcoin party and you get to hang out. And if you're centralized, well, welcome to the SEC. Boom, go that way. And you know, you're a company, you have shareholders, stakeholders, whatever, then you go over here. And I don't really want to let like too much of the steam out of the bill because it's really her thing. But when they sent it to us for like an opinion on it, I was blown away. I was like, this is it, guys. We did it. It's there, man. You know? And I think her and her staff really get it. But I think part of the reason why they do get it is because Wyoming is really like a frontier state. You know, it doesn't have a lot of the politics or the sort of the wishy-washy, you know, let's say the California thing, right? There's not like there's not that whole like schmoozy, nepotistic, you know, cycle of doom in that there is in New York politics or California politics in Wyoming. It's a lot cleaner and fresher, less people, more to the point, harsher weather. Maybe that just makes people a little bit more humble or something. I don't know, but they really do get it.
I was about to say, I did have the opportunities to go to school in DC, and let me tell you, the nepotism is alive and well in that city.
Right.
But what needs to be said on behalf of myself and frankly the entire Bitcoin community, like, thank you guys for taking the time to write that book. It's on my reading list. I'm excited to get to it. But Pete mentioned sort of the work that you guys did, and you touch on something that I think kind of goes overlooked. There's a lot of information about Bitcoin. There are a lot of blogs, there are a lot of books. It's really scattered. There's no Bitcoin curriculum, if you will. So can sometimes some of the important information can get lost along the way. So you guys really did incredible work to just put all that information in one place for the people who, frankly, whether or not we agree with them having the ability to make those decisions, they are making those decisions, and you've made it easy to digest. And that is a tremendous step forward for our community. So thank you for that. I do want to, though, ask you if you can maybe expose either the people or some of the questions that were asked of the DC on behalf of the DC politicians who maybe you were like, you just don't get it, man. And what were those conversations like? And were there any successful sort of flippages of it started with you didn't get it, and by the end they were like, oh my God, thank you. I need to call my financial advisor. I need to call my wife or my partner right now. We need to be in this.
Well, I think one of the things that was great was I would bring my laptop to the meetings with me, right? And of course, my laptop has all these stickers on it and stuff like that, like terrible OPSEC, but it's got like, you know, cryptocurrency is not a crime, and, you know, stay humble, stack sats, like buy Bitcoin because fuck banks, all these like crypto graffiti stuff, you know, stickers and stuff like that. So I'm at lunch with, I can say this now because he's officially retired and he's going to go work for Trump now, but I'm meeting Devin Nunes, right? So I'm there with Devin Nunes, who's my local rep here in California. He's a super right-wing guy, like very Republican. You know, I have a lot of very like, you know, I would say Devin Nunes supporter clients locally, right? Because I'm a lot of farmers and he's about water rights and all this other stuff. So I sort of explained it to him and he goes, yeah, but what about bad actors? And I'm like, what about cash? You know? And he kind of like goes like this and he goes, okay. So I was like, listen, it doesn't matter what financial system there is. There will always be people that learn how to exploit it, like PPP loans, where, you know, basically all this money was authorized and billions of it went to bad people. Billions of it was lost and it's never coming back because they issued it too quickly. I said, now just imagine if for whatever reason, you know, you had access to give it to somebody in Bitcoin directly, you know, then you would see where it went. And then he goes, yeah, but you can't see where it goes. I'm like, oh, well, hang on a second, Tinkerbell, here we go. So then I pull up mempool.space and I show him a really nice looking, you know, interface that shows how Bitcoin works. And I sort of explain Bitcoin as this the way I explain it to everybody is I say like, well, you've played Jenga, right? And they're like, yeah, sure. I'm like, okay, it's reverse Jenga. As the transactions come in, those are like little blocks. And then all these miners are out there trying to guess the last block. So instead of being the dickhead that pulls the last block out and the whole thing falls, there's one guy that guesses the right hash, and then boom, it goes in, and then the block is complete. And then they get rewarded, and then a new block starts. And he goes, okay, well, let me see what this means. So let me see what this looks like. So I pull up like Blockchain Explorer, and then I'm showing him like this live. And I'm like, look, someone just sent 250 grand, and someone just sent 80 bucks. And like, and he goes, okay, so what if there's, let's say, a crooked politician that has a son that likes to do paintings and no one knows who's buying the paintings? I said, okay, theoretically, like, let's say that they're using Bitcoin and you have an auction, because I was explaining it using like an NFT thing. I was like, okay, well, there is an auction site and there's someone buying it so you can see it happen. Well, then you're going to see that $75,000 worth of Bitcoin go to that address. So then you're going to know what his address is theoretically. And then, you'll see who sent it. I said, so then I clicked on an ad, like just some random address. And I was like, oh, this is like an exchange address. Cause it was like, it had done, 41 million transactions or something crazy like that. Right. And he goes, how do you know that's an exchange? I'm like, well, no one has 388,000 Bitcoin like this, and they haven't transferred all of it. So I said, watch how that's sending it to all these people. I said, that's either a mining pool, like F2 pool doing a distribution. So then I pull up both of them at the same time. And I was like, oh, that was actually F2 pool because this was like 6.33 Bitcoin. And he's like, is this some like hacker site? I'm like, no, this was literally like a free website. And you see him go like click. And then it was like, he was cool with it after that, it was really funny because then he said, okay, well, I'm not worried now, because if like we put a bunch of our own nerds on this, we can watch it. And I mean, effectively, like, that surveillance tool exists whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? Which is sort of part of the point with Taproot and things like that. People that want to take better care of their money can, or better care of their privacy can. But a lot of people are just using Bitcoin normally, right? And in an open way. I said, listen, we don't have any, as Bitcoiners, we're not really trying to hide from you guys. We're not trying to hide from people that want to promote American values of freedom of speech, stuff like that. We're trying to hide from censorship. And he goes, I hate censorship. So then it was like, okay, click. The craziest meeting that we had, though, honestly, of all the meetings, we met with Newt Gingrich. And Newt Gingrich is early Bitcoin. And I want to say like 3-digit Bitcoin, right? So like when Bitcoin was like in the 3-digit price range, he was like, well, yeah, I bought some Bitcoin back when it was this. And I was like, you son of a bitch, you got Bitcoin way early, like good for you. But we were talking and I was explaining my view of game theory, in regards to the international stuff. And this was a couple months ago. So this is before everything else. But I was like, okay, look at this. Like, heating oil in Europe, like there's this Nord Stream pipeline and Germany needs it. They're taking their reactors offline. And I like laid out the entire scenario. And then he was like, okay, so what are you promoting? I said, well, think about it, right? If China's promoting their digital currency as a way of, their central bank digital currency as a way of like ensnaring more of that part of the world. If we provide the dollar and Bitcoin as acceptable rails for payment for commerce, and America's like adopting Bitcoin at that point, then we have the freedom rails and they have the totalitarian control rails. And then a country that's not sure which way they want to go, they're probably going to want to go towards dollars and Bitcoin, regardless of which one they want to use. That's the vector that they're going to see themselves on. And he was like, oh, I like that. Okay. All right. And here we are with, Russia invading Ukraine or whatever else, right? And so all this stuff is sort of played out. And so as you're having these conversations with these people, you're meeting, national security advisors and stuff like this, like DoD contractors and stuff that are interested in Bitcoin because they have the same patriotic idea that, hey, America, listen, Bitcoin's going to happen. Let's make America like a Bitcoin land, as opposed to an anti-Bitcoin land, because who wants to live in an anti-Bitcoin land, and then if we see the brain drain, because if you have enough Bitcoin that like it would change your life if you were unable to use it in America, then a lot of people would just leave. A lot of people are just going to vote with their feet. They're going to go. I like, you want to lose all those people? You want to lose all those potential donors and all that tax revenue when these people are buying houses and cars and Lambos and, paying for private school for their kids and all this stuff that Bitcoiners like care about, which is like the future effectively. I said, all Bitcoiners are like futuristic people. We're not like trying to get rich today. We're thinking about protecting our family long-term. Like that's the whole point. And then they're like, oh, like you see these wheels change with them. But you can tell right away if someone's receptive or not, if they're like, oh, I heard Bitcoin's a scam. You're like, oh God, here we go. So yeah, I'm like, no, that's Solana. Solana's a scam. So it's like, a little bit easier. Yeah.
I do want to shift back to baseball a little bit, and maybe you haven't thought of this, but we tend to joke in the Bitcoin community, oh, Bitcoin fixes this with whatever issue sort of arises. Is there an issue within Major League Baseball or just baseball in general that you noticed that you believe Bitcoin or a Bitcoin solution would help fix that issue? And if not, no harm or foul.
I think one of the challenges with Bitcoin for just really anybody that hasn't done anything more than a 30-minute Google search on it is the tangibility of it, right? So the baseball players are a little bit more anonymous looking than NFL players or NBA players, right? Like a baseball player walks into a room, he's generally like a normal sized person, between 5'10" and 6'3", like medium build, like maybe lanky, but maybe a little bit pudgy or whatever. But like a 6'10" dude walks into a bar, you're like, that guy looks like he plays basketball. So whether he does or not, you just sort of assume that, right? Oh, this guy is a basketball guy. I think that the personal security aspect of Bitcoin is a little bit different than a lot of baseball players are willing to contend with. But I think on the scale of saying, oh, put 1% of your money in it or something like that, it as a financial responsibility tool, it'd be great, because it really is a hedge against global collapse of all these other investments that these guys are doing. A lot of baseball players, by the time they're making good money, they have so much disposable income, they literally don't know what to do with it. So they gamble, they buy stupid shit. I had teammates that were like throwing, like burning money on airplane flights to each other. They would basically like losing $10,000 playing poker or something like that, And I think about it today, I'm like, God, if that guy would have bought like anything responsible with that money, right, what would that be worth today? But these guys say the stupidest shit I've ever heard, which is, I'm so rich it doesn't matter. And I had plenty of teammates that would say stuff like that, and I was always like, yeah, like, let me know when you're like 48 years old and you've been out of the game for a while and you've had some kids and you have to pay for private school, if you're so rich it doesn't matter, because I doubt that's the case. A lot of baseball players end up just signing with like these financial advisor dudes that don't actually produce any value. They're not really. And I think if they were a little bit more educated, and I've been fighting for this for a couple of years now, actually like over a decade, because I tried to get baseball into gold. I tried to get the Players Association pension fund into gold back in like 2009 or 10 or something like that. And that would have been a great payoff, today, as a hedge with everything else, because they're in like T-bills and all this other stuff. The pension fund has billions of dollars, like no joke. The MLB Players Fund has like billions of dollars in it, and they've constantly taken the route of renting and not owning, like all like that type of mindset a lot of times. And I think it's cost the players collectively a lot of money, the same way that it's cost all these other unions for United Auto Workers or whatever else. I think that like unions in general have a tendency to get corrupted very, very quickly. And I don't think the baseball player union has this issue because there's really good leadership, but I think having a little bit more of a Bitcoin standard mindset would really allow the players union to not only say, oh, well, we reject this proposal from the owners, but now we have so much money, fuck it, we'll just start our own league, Like, you're gonna lock us out? Cool, fine. We'll go play somewhere else. Like, we'll literally all go. We'll go do our own thing. We don't need you. You guys want to be jerks? Enjoy paying rent on that stadium, And they would have more leverage if they had more money. Right now, like a couple $1 billion isn't enough to get it done. But if they would have spent like 20 or 30 $million in Bitcoin maybe a couple of years ago, like what would that be worth today, right? Same thing with gold. If they would have done the same thing with gold, and if now you get this outsized return. And I think that's the mindset that I just need to get a hold of some of these guys and explain that to them, and I've been rejected from that. But as I get more stuff in DC, now I'm an author, I have a book, so you have to listen to me. I'm going to pull that card on them and be like, hey, listen, I'm a published author now. I'm not just some idiot. Like, I've got to, like all this other stuff. Because it's just a classic thing. Like, until you've proven that they're wrong with like 10 things, they won't even listen. And that's what sucks. So maybe if I take a mining company public, I can finally get their attention. We'll see how that goes.
From your lips to God's ears, man. I mean, what you described to me about them just pulling money together in a Vanguard fund, that sounds no different than any other employer just offering you a 401k. But
Right.
with how much money is in that fund, and our producer, jokingly but probably seriously, mentioned to me it's probably underfunded based on the way you describe players' mentality around saving and investing goes. I mean, I am always a big proponent of financial education. I was an aspiring sports agent for some time and had my own sports agency briefly in college. And that was a fun experience to sort of learn the dynamics between what your role is as an agent versus what your role is as far as like an advisor goes. I would love to see this. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and apologies for the ignorance in this, but I believe the lockdown is still in effect right now, correct? And
Yeah.
I'm fully in support of these players getting what they want. We don't tune in for the owners. We don't tune in for the stadiums. Some of us tune in based on the jersey color, but like I watch these games because I want to watch my favorite players play. And I do hope that the players get what they deserve. And if not, like, please go play in Japan. Like, there's enough TV coverage. There's enough money over there. Like, you guys deserve to be paid and compensated justly.
But that's what that mentality though is like I said, the Bitcoin standard mentality is like, screw you, I'm going to take my talent and I'm going to go do it over here, right? And that's what's different about the sovereign individual Bitcoin person versus someone that's grown up in a very cushy lifestyle. And the problem is guys get adjusted to this cushiness and they don't realize that the couch is a trap. You know, it's not like no one gets ripped sitting on the couch. You know what I mean? No one gets better sitting on the couch, but the couch is so comfortable. So it's sort of like the process like sucks them in and they feel safe. You know, it's all this illusion. And then the owners just go, oh, by the way, whoop, you can't play for us, you know? And then they pull this crap and it's all a negotiation. So at the end of the day, like everybody wins, you know, I mean, the owners win big time. They wouldn't be building $1 billion stadiums if they weren't winning, right? At the end of the day. So, you know, but a lot of the owners, it's not their first cause of business, right? Because so which is to say they don't run it like a business. They run it like a country club. So they run it as like Mike Ilitch, who owned the Tigers. He got rich because he owned Little Caesars. He was like the Little Caesars guy, right? You know, Mark Cuban sold an internet company effectively and cashed out. So he owned a basketball team. And then, you know, but he's like a venture guy, right? So Chamath owns the Warriors with a bunch of other people, but he's a venture guy. So these guys don't really give a shit about how the team does in some instances. And they don't run it like a business, which is to say they don't even try to win. And that's one of the big contention points right now is that some of the teams are not trying to win. They're tanking so they can get better draft picks so they can basically like double down on the bottom. They're basically shorting themselves so they can buy lower, you know, and buy cheaper. They're shorting their players so they can buy better, like cheaper players, younger players, whatever. And the payment structure within baseball, it incentivizes that a little bit, and that's what they're trying to penalize. The players want to see that penalized. You shouldn't be allowed to tank in professional sports. So it's like, okay, cool. We'll do a 15-15 league, and you're going to get relegated. You know what I mean? You guys want to fuck around and lose on purpose? Get relegated, bitch. Go to the second division. You know, like that. And that's the reason why Premier League football is so good in Europe, because of that, because there's a threat that you will literally get displaced. Like imagine the Red Sox tanking and then like the Royals come up and from like the lower division of the Pirates and like take their spot. Now it is the opposite of that. The Pirates are consistently tanking and they're one of the teams that people have issues with. And the Yankees are like, that's fine. We'll take all your players. Thank you. You know what I mean? So it's like this weird thing, this power struggle between owners, and the players basically get involved in like, you guys have to talk to each other. And we effectively become the tool that allows us to bridge between the teams that don't have as much local revenue versus the ones that do. And that's effectively what the players union has done. When I was negotiating these collective bargaining agreements, it always felt like we were in the middle trying to get mom and dad to talk to each other, you know, and it was kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an excellent point. I'd say a majority, if not almost all, the only ones I can think of off the top of my head are the Bus family and the Steinbrenners, who genuinely, everyone else like made their nut elsewhere. And these are the only families where the business is exactly that. I mean, as a Lakers fan, I will say I've noticed certain things where the Lakers are now populating or offering, like, they had some weird offer where they partnered with Halo. They do all these random things around LA, which they never did before. And the conversation we were having was, oh, they got hurt bad during COVID, where every other owner had their other sort of business, their other lifelines making them money. These teams that are strictly focused on the team business, they're feeling the effects of COVID now, and they need to figure out how to cash in. CJ, I could probably talk to you for days on end. This has been too much fun, but the hour has come and gone very quickly. I do want to present one last question before we go from Twitter. Shout out to Tommy for this one, but is there a batter, dead or alive, that you would love the opportunity to face, and why?
I would say that like I would have loved to effectively pitch against a lot of the studs from like maybe the 50s or 60s, you know, using all the modern stuff to say that like Ted Williams or Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or any of these guys, these all-time greats dudes, I would love to have faced those guys, you know, when I was playing. But effectively, every generation of players has all-time greats in it, right? You look at the Trouts, the man, I put Josh Hamilton in this category as like one of the best
He was,
talents of all time.
he
He
was
didn't
such a good hitter with
statistically,
you guys.
yeah, he was amazing. You know, I got to face like Mark Teixeira and Sammy Sosa and Todd Helton and you
You
know,
had
a lot of
Pujols a
these.
bunch of times too, right? He was
Yeah,
still
I faced Pujols just in the World Series, but like, I mean, you know,
that's
A-Rod,
right.
I
The
finished
Rangers were
A-Rod,
so. I
like a lot of
forgot.
these guys. But imagine being able to like go through some sort of simulation that you were able to say, hey, I struck out Babe Ruth or whatever.
Right.
So for me, I would say the guy that I did best against, like that was like the all-time best guy that I faced that did the best against. I would say between Ichiro and A-Rod, like I did the best against those two guys as like for the in terms of statistically what they contributed to baseball and statistically how I did against them. I got absolutely freaking pwned by some of these like weird guys that were very strange and like I couldn't figure out how to get them out. I didn't face some guys as many times. Like I think like Buster Posey was one of the all-time greatest players, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think he really retired early. He could have been like a Tom Brady guy that played another, you know, 4 years or whatever. I did really well against him, but in limited duty, you know. So it's always great to say, oh, I did well against this guy. Then there was other guys like Miguel Cabrera, I did okay against him. But like Adrian Beltre, dude, that guy crushed me. He was really hard. Like I only played with him for 1 year and I played against him for all these other years. So he was difficult. But I like that challenge, you know, like it's not fun if you're just a bully and you're just picking on people all the time. It's nice when someone like smacks you around and it's like, oh, okay, let's dance, let's do this. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, I haven't seen one of those before. So, you know, I had a long career. So I had a really like a lot of it that I would look back and say, that was, you know, fantastic. And I wouldn't trade any of it. You know, I can't bend my arm more than this, right? That's as much as my arm bends as opposed to this, right? So like, that's it. My arm is like a clanks when I do that, right? That's as much as it goes, because my elbow is so fucked that I don't have any cartilage. But I wouldn't trade that. I'm happy I left it all out on the field. I might come back as a knuckleballer when I turn 48 or something like that, just to give it a shot. But I think, you know, for the most part, I'm probably just going to ride this Bitcoin thing and then eventually maybe even get into politics if politics needs me, because it doesn't seem like these guys want to listen. Like, and maybe I can go up there and do my stand-up comedy and then they'll listen to me and vote for me. We'll see what happens.
Well, CJ, thank you so much for joining us. Give a shout. Where can our viewers find you, follow you? I know you have an appearance at the Bakersfield meetup as well. So for those of you, or the Fresno Bitcoin meetup, shout out for that as well.
This is my let's see, my Twitter handle I came up with in 2008 is Straight Edge Racer, because I'm straight edge and I like to race. But you know, if you look up CJ Wilson and you see the guy jumping with laser eyes, that's me on Twitter. And then you can also follow our accounts like restricted with Twitter. I think we've like gotten in trouble for like retweeting things or something, but BTC_coalition is that. And then our book is, I'm just going to plug this really quick, Bitcoin and the American Dream, although it might be backwards. This is our book that we wrote. And I think this process with Jimmy, going through a book sprint with everybody, it makes me want to do it again. So I'd really like to write one about, you know, like national security or something like that, something that I like pay attention to. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it was great. Good times.
Awesome. Well, CJ, thank you so much. Make sure you guys check out the book that everyone wrote, Bitcoin and the American Dream, and make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. Thanks, CJ. We'll definitely have you come back.
Great to have you again, CJ.
Thanks, dudes. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, before we flip over to our new mining segment, We've got 3 special guests joining us today. We're going to have a short break, and I want to remind you, this is the last day you can get 21% off your Bitcoin 2022 conference tickets, which is a huge discount. If you pay with Bitcoin, I think you get an extra $100 off, if I'm not mistaken. So your promo code for that is YTMAG, and this is the last time you can get that 21% off. This is the last day, so go get your tickets now so you can save some sats and buy this dip. We'll have a short break and be back for a new mining segment.
Do I need to share something on Twitter?
All right, hello everyone. We are trying out something new this week. We are formally introducing our mining insights that we are digging into. And we brought on a couple guests here. We have John Riggins from Bitcoin Magazine team and Alejandro as well. He's very well known in the mining community. So we figured bring him on, get his commentary, and just go through what's up with the market right now and dive into some news. So welcome, guys.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do it.
Thanks,
yeah, so
yeah.
we've you know, all we hear all the time about you know, the people wanting more mining content. So we're trying to give it to the people here. Alejandro, maybe let's start out with just a little intro of you for the people who don't know you yet, and then we can get into the agenda for the discussion here.
Sure. So I've been working in Bitcoin for many years. I was co-founder, or I am co-founder of BTC.com. I ran that for a couple of years, grew that to be the largest mining pool for 2 years in a row. And then I joined Poolin and was vice president there, and grew Poolin mining pool to be the second largest, and also expanded its mining farm capabilities, first in China, and then I moved it essentially to Texas. So I was part of the great miner migration. Yeah, so I've been in the mining pool / farm space for many years, and right now I'm doing advisory for mining farms, and also selling equipment like containers and mining rigs.
Heck yeah, good stuff. Looks like you got some inventory back there behind you too already, so that's good.
Yeah, it's not real, by the way. It's not real.
Hey, thanks for the clarification there. Hey, Eric, you want to pull up the outline here, and then we can pop into some of this data.
Sure. Let's see. 1 sec.
Remind us too what we're going through.
Yeah.
Alejandro, I was in Houston this past week and went to the Houston Bitcoin meetup and heard some stories about your time in Texas in that great mining migration. So that was fun to see that meetup in person.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the best meetups in the world right now. I swear, the energy and the amount of people that join and are doing awesome things in Bitcoin, especially in Bitcoin mining, is just amazing. It's awesome to see the oil and gas community joining the Bitcoin mining community. Beautiful thing. And yeah, lots of fun. We had lots of fun.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So Mining Monday, we're working on the kinks here today still, but this is kind of what we're going to be going through. So let's do a little bit of a market overview. We're going to be checking out Braiins data page this week for this. And then also, Alejandro, curious kind of on your take on some of these some of the best data feeds to be following as well. But Eric, going to pop us back over to that page.
Yep, sure thing.
Cool. So Alejandro, I'm going to kind of want to walk through this while kind of learning how you think about these stats.
Okay.
So, y'all at btc.com, at Poolin, you're tracking all sorts of things. This is, a publicly available data page from Braiins. What are kind of what are kind of the first things that you're looking at every day that you're, wanting to stay on top of? And, as those pool businesses, walk us through kind of what's important, what we should be thinking about.
Sure. Well, as a mining pool operator the last 5 years, the first thing I would do every single morning as I grab my cup of coffee was check the current hash rate of our pool. That was very important for us, of course. And then I would look into the general hash rate, or the overview of the whole entire network hash rate, see how it's going. And I would check my competitors' hash rate, see who's growing, see who I must attack, essentially.
There you go. Yeah. So current hash rate here. You're coming in, you're checking in the morning. Are we at all-time highs now? Walk us, kind of explain where we are hash rate wise now and kind of what it means.
Well, yeah, we're almost at all-time high. I think the all-time high was it was like 204. So we're just there. 193 exahashes is a hell of a lot of hash rate. It's for me it shows one very clear thing, that the mining network, the mining industry is growing very strong. There's a lot of interest, a lot of big players still jumping in, big players building out their farms even more. It shows that, people have come to realize, and companies have come to realize, that mining is a very feasible economic activity. And that's the whole beauty of mining, right? It's basically takes the greed of people and companies and then transforms it into securing the Bitcoin network. It's a beautiful design. And the stronger the hash rate, essentially the stronger the network. You have to recreate the same amount of electricity nonstop in order to attack the Bitcoin network and Bitcoin block. So it's it's basically impossible. So the stronger the hash rate, again, the better it is for Bitcoin.
Yeah, for sure. Eric, come down so we can see this the timeline here of where we are. And so, Alejandro, you mentioned you're moving to Texas for the great hash rate migration from China, and we can see that kind of the pretty starkly between May and July, and then kind of the steady rise since then. Talk to us a little about your experience in that migration to Texas, and kind of what you see in this chart that kind of stands out.
Well, you can see actually in around July 2021, you see the huge drop after China decided to ban Bitcoin mining, which is true. Just to add a little information there, it's true that they banned Bitcoin mining, but there's still Bitcoin mining going on in China, although it's a bit more obfuscated. So it's also like it's distributed even further around China. So instead of having large farms in China, what happens now is that there's many larger farms, very small farms across China, in order to not raise the alarm. But yeah, what happened was that, as you see, as the drop, that meant a lot of machines turning off. For example, Poolin had to turn off all our machines.
Mm-hmm.
And we were not the only ones. I'm talking, Poolin was one of the major ones, of course, but we had the whole entire Chinese Bitcoin mining community had to basically turn off and put the machines into warehouses, hopefully into shipping containers to ship them overseas. What occurred was that the large Chinese mining farms operators sent teams to the U.S. to find to set up locations, to find hosting arrangements with American mining farms, and that was a success. It took some time, as you can see with the chart itself. You can see that it's a general up trend there, because it took some time. A lot of the hosting, the Americans were not necessarily prepared to receive, X amount of exahash, a ludicrous amount of exahash so quickly. So it took some time for everyone to kind of get the right equipment, just the negotiations, the contracts, all that stuff. Also the shipping of, you had to add also that the whole entire shipping, and logistics across the globe is a bit crazy because of all of COVID, because of, trade wars. So a lot of things had to be taken into consideration. But yeah, you saw that basically what the hash rate chart shows was a continuous turning on of Chinese mining machines, but also not only that, like a lot of people it's not only the Chinese mining operators that turned on again, it's also American miners received new equipment, and not only American, European, South Americans, Kazakhstan. A lot of farming operations have been expanding, and the manufacturers have been sending machines for the last couple months. So you see that reflected in the hash rate as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Eric, pop back up to that top chart section again. Cool. So first thing in the morning, you're checking your pool's hash rate, current hash rate. Anything else that you think is worth pointing out here?
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty adjustment is something that we watch also very closely. If for example, the difficulty starts to decrease, it's a sign that something may be going on. Of course, there's a lot of variance in the difficulty adjustment, so you got to take the stats with a bit of, like, sometimes you see a very quick decrease of difficulty, but that could just be variance. So you have to kind of take in consideration that if a difficulty lowering occurs or increase, it has to be like a lot of blocks back to back, not just 1 or 2 or 3, but more like 6, 7, 8, 10, X plus. And then you start realizing, okay, there's something going on. Someone's been shut, a big farm has shut down, or some country has banned Bitcoin mining again, or whatever it is. So then you have to, then you start, what I would do if I would see a clear difficulty increase or decrease, is I start asking, our clients at Poolin in those days, back in the day, or the clients, or asking just, my mining friends, what the hell's going on? What's going on? So then, we would find out before basically anyone else in the industry what is really going on. Before the Chinese ban was like a black flag. It was not something anyone expected. So that one was very, no one saw that one coming. I mean, there was talk about it, but no one thought that it was going to really occur. But besides that, you see it reflecting the difficulty adjustment when something happens.
And real quick, what is that threshold you're looking for? Because I know you said there's some variance. Like, are you considered, is a 1% adjustment, is that considered pretty large, or are we talking 3, 4, 5%?
No. So I'm talking about in between the 2016 block adjustment. Every difficulty adjustment requires 2016 blocks. Every 2016 blocks, a new difficulty adjustment occurs. But in between those 2016 blocks, if we see the difficulty decrease in between then it can mean variance, but sometimes it can mean something else. That's what I mean. But 1% adjustment is nothing. 1% down or up, 1, 2, 3% is not a big deal. 10, 15 is definitely something that something significant.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Cool. Mining profit.
Another thing I would like to add is that something we always see is the fees. The fees for us, it also shows activity in Bitcoin in general. As we can see, transaction fees have been pretty low lately. but yeah, we do monitor transaction fees too, as a sign of, like, okay, there is perhaps, a big movement coming in price, or some sort of, economic breakdown in a country has occurred, which has created a lot of Bitcoin usage in that country. So transaction fees, and also just, it's a good thing for our miners, right? We would always kind of celebrate, the transaction fees increasing, because it increases the bottom line of our miners. So,
yeah, good thing to point out there for sure. Let's head down to some of this pool data, some of
sure.
the hardware.
Yeah, right before we move on to that, just one question for Alejandro too. I know that price usually follows like hash rate, and I was wondering if there's anything to say about this divergence right here.
The price that is something I've been following this whole entire argument of price, following hash rate following price. It's a difficult thing to come to.
Mm-hmm.
What we've seen is that the price, does affect the hash rate, but if it does affect the hash rate, it comes like further it lags behind the price. Now, I wouldn't. This is my own opinion. It's a contentious argument. It's a contentious topic. So, but that's what we've seen historically.
Okay, cool. So let's go down to.
Yeah, curious, Alejandro, on hardware that's being used now. You've deployed a ton. Have seen a ton move from China to the U.S. and elsewhere. Have deployed a lot of it. What's kind of a breakdown of the hardware market right now, in terms of who's bringing what online, what's actually being shipped, what's not being shipped, what the things that people are making orders for, having to wait for. Just give us a little bit of an overview of what's happening.
Yeah. So right now, actually today, today is, I think it's actually almost morning now in China. It's February 1st, which is the Chinese Lunar New Year. So
yeah, that's right. Good day. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's to all our Chinese friends and colleagues. But so that means that the hardware markets are officially closed. It's the only time of the year. It's the only time of the year that they're closed. So I actually the last 2 weeks, these last 2 weeks have been insane with the amount of sales that have been going on in the hardware market. A lot of people have been trying to, because of the decrease in price, the decrease in Bitcoin price has also decreased the price of the miners. Perhaps not so as significant as you would think, but there has been a decrease. So, and a lot of people know that China is coming to the New Year, and that the hardware, the shop is closed. And also, of course, this is a little alpha here. A lot of our Chinese colleagues and all these supplier companies, main manufacturers, they want to get their end of year bonuses and get those last sales in. So they're very aggressive in their sales. So you can find some very good deals. I told a lot of my clients that it was a good time to buy. Some big boys came in and bought a lot of machines.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen lately, of course, is nonstop. The S19 is by far the most bought unit right now. It's especially the 100 terahash. It seems to be like one of the most expensive S19s, sometimes even more, or USD per terahash sometimes can increase even more than 110. The 110 terahash unit, S19 unit. It's because I think there's a lot of talk in the industry and a lot of rumors that some people have found a way to increase overclock the hash rate of the 100 terahash S19 to up to 50% more. So instead of getting 100 terahashes, they're getting 150 terahashes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how are they doing that? I'm still trying to find out how they're doing that. But from what I see, from the sales of these machines, it seems to be points to it being true, because someone or many people are buying all of them as soon as they come online, or yeah, they're being sold. So I have, you know, I think it should be true that yeah. Of course, the micro BT units are also sold well. You have to, you know, as a miner and someone that's perhaps not so well versed in mining, one thing you have to you know, look into or consider is that a lot of these containers and a lot of the mining farm facilities are built around the S19. So you know, the WhatsMiner units are sometimes different dimensions. So sometimes it's quite difficult for a farm to change machines, or it's going to take some time, some money to move to like change the dimensions of the container or whatnot. So a lot of and vice versa, of course, if you have a container that was built specifically for the, you know, M21S, it's going to be very difficult for you to move into a different manufacturer because of just the dimensions of how it's been created. So yeah, you see, but the WhatsMiner is also very popular, very good machine as well. And you know, I think the days of S19 and just the days of BIME and micro BT only being the ones being bought, we're still going to see it for at least a year. But I think there's a lot of competition coming into online, and I think we're going to speak about that a little bit later. But I think a more, you know, more manufacturers online that are providing more competition will be good for prices, and just for, you know, we'll see, competition is always good.
Yeah, that's an interesting detail on a few things you mentioned I think are interesting. The sizing of WhatsMiner units and Bitmain's units kind of making a difference sometimes. Good stuff. And the Antminer S9 is still up there at the top. Where is that being used? You know, so we know about the kind of newer models. What's the story with those at this point? Are they going to last another year?
The S19 is going to last, of course, going to last more than a year. Did you say S19 or S9? Sorry.
S9.
Oh, S9. S9. Well, the S9 is one hell of a machine. You know, I predicted that they would be offline by now, but I was wrong. Very wrong. But you know, these machines are super old now, and transporting them across the world, you're gonna get, you know, a lot of machines, broken machines, because of just shipping and handling. They're so old and they've been used so much that, you know, they break. So nowadays, like a lot of the S9, you know, unless you have some sort of secret sauce where you have like, I don't know, there's so many different miners out there that have, you know, found a way to make the S9 super profitable. It could be like lowering the voltage, or for home miners, for example, a lot of home miners are lowering the voltage to make it so as like the voltage usage is lower than a you know, heater. Which then in that case, you know, it makes a bunch of sense. You don't need a heater because these things will heat your house for sure. Of course, you have the sound, but that's also something that's a different thing. But you can also work with the sound that it produces to lower it. But yeah, if you have essentially a S9 that produces Bitcoin and it also heats your house and it's lower voltage than the heater you use traditionally, then, you know, a lot of people are using it, and that's what I mean by secret sauce. If you have found a way, and that's the beauty of mining, and that's why mining proof of work is so beautiful, because you can create a competitive advantage with just thinking outside of the box. Oh, look at this! I can lower the voltage of this unit, and it, you know, warms my house, and it produces some Bitcoin. So
fascinating.
Yeah, that's but I think S9s are on there. You know, the S9s will be used, I think, mostly for the next couple of years, or year at least, in more of home mining type of things, because you can really tinker with everything, the firmware, voltage, etc. But for larger shipments, I think a lot of them are going to countries like Venezuela and Iran, where the electricity is next to free, you know, and a lot of people feel more comfortable sending an S9 to Venezuela than an S19.
Yeah, good analysis there.
Thank you.
think we're going to pop over to some current events next. Anything else you want to point out here on as we're still on this insights page?
Well, I'm actually quite curious to see how the current price of Bitcoin, which is lowered, quite a good amount, is going to affect the hash rate. It actually has not affected the hash rate. We're seeing top of the line hash rate, global hash rate numbers. So I know I maybe the hash rate won't decrease. I think a lot of mining farm operators are just buying even more machines and more new miners coming online. So perhaps we won't see a correlation between the price and the hash rate, but we'll see.
Yeah. Eric, we're ready to pop to the next thing.
Yeah, so I guess we're gonna finish out our Mining Monday segment with some news that happened over the past couple of weeks, and then the first one I want to jump in here because I think this is pretty big. It's Intel's plan to launch some Bitcoin mining chips, getting the manufacturing game, and especially bringing up. I'd never considered the dimensions of the chips or the mining units themselves. So I'd be interested to hear Alejandro's take on what's going to happen here with Intel.
That one's that's a hard question for me to answer. Of course, there's a lot of unknown. They haven't really released any pricing. For example, we know that Intel, is more of a B2B type of business, especially when it comes to the servers and whatnot. So, I think there is a sort of consensus amongst miners that they're going to be selling mostly to, large operations and not selling like one Intel S19 or whatever to Joe the miner. They're going to be selling it to this big farms. It's definitely a good thing. I'm very happy, and a lot of people in the mining community are also very happy that Intel is joining the fray. Of course, Bitmain, to a lesser degree, What's Miner and Michael BT are way ahead of Intel. But that's not to say that they can get there. Of course, Intel is one of the big companies, and they can do it. But in the beginning, I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the Bitmains and the Michael BTs. So we'll see how we still haven't gotten a lot of information yet about what the Intel Bitcoin mining chip is, but we're super interested to find out.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, and then we're gonna run through.
Yeah, and that was that was kind of the main kind of new hardware news item the last week or so. Alejandro, you mentioned kind of just in that space. Might be getting popped off.
What?
Anything else you want to mention, Alejandro, on the new hardware entrance side?
Well, yeah. Well, there's definitely some new entrants coming into this. There's a lot of startups working on right now. We have, of course, Block that said they're gonna be making something with mining. That's very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, there's also some talk about some stealth companies that are stealth startups that are doing some chips too. So I really the next year, 2 years are going to be super interesting in the hardware space for mining.
Good stuff.
Great.
Cool. I guess we'll just finish this segment out. We brought on David Zell from our nonprofit team, who's going to also discuss what's happening with the U.S. House hearing on Bitcoin mining. David, do you want to give your quick 2 cents here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Eric. Well, I think Namcios's article title here is fair, that the hearing showed some misunderstandings. But yeah, broad takeaways were that the hearing went better than a lot of people, I think, were expecting. A lot of the language in the memos that were being passed around and sort of the marketing, for lack of a better word, about the event made it seem a little bit like a show trial with a predetermined conclusion. Didn't really get that sense watching and then thinking about everyone's statements and questions afterward. I think the overwhelming, sort of the prevailing sentiment overwhelmingly was concern but also a recognition of the need to learn more. There were a lot of really good questions. There were some bad questions. I think the most surprising thing for me, as someone who works at the intersection of Bitcoin and government affairs and public policy, was how soon the conversation went into a debate about proof of work versus proof of stake. That's not necessarily something that I expected coming out of a hearing like this. And I think that was one of the most exciting things about the hearing, but also one of the most troubling, which is that if these conversations are going to be nuanced enough to the point where they are weighing the merits of proof of stake and proof of work, it really highlights the need for future hearings to have people that are Bitcoin experts. We need people from mining companies represented at these hearings. We need people that are familiar with consensus algorithms, with proof of stake, with proof of work. Because yeah, the people they had now were really not qualified to speak on some of the nuances that particularly the back half of the hearing got into.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see what has to come in the near future here as well. But I'm still bullish on proof of work, and hopefully our leaders can get understanding of that too. All right. I think that's going to wrap up our first ever Mining Monday segment here. So thanks for bearing with us as we work through this. Thanks, David Zell, for attending. Thank you, Alejandro, as well, for attending and giving your input on the mining overview market. And come back next week. Every Monday, we're going to be doing this around 3 p.m. Eastern. So looking forward to it.
Hey,
Thanks, Eric.
Alejandro,
Yeah.
Eric, John, everybody, thanks for coming, guys. Come back real soon. Can't wait to see you next Monday and continue this conversation. It's great to have you guys today.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nolan, how are you doing today? Oh no, we can't hear you. We're gonna go to a short break and then we'll be back with Nolan.
Hi, Nolan, Bitcoiner, another episode of The Breakup, a show where we look at our relationship with money. It's all about the psychology engines that drive our economy forward or back in some cases. We don't know, right? We're here today to talk about a few stories that happened over the weekend. Lots of talk about systemic risk. So I decided I'll do one on systemic risk management today. But first, a story to sort of set the context, right? Really important. And a bit of a theme of today's episode. So I'm going to be picking on a few people that are not Bitcoiners and sort of putting them forward because they might not be in your bubble. You might not actually hear what they say. You might have blocked them. You might have unfollowed them a long time ago. So these are people that might trigger you. So just let you know that I trigger myself on purpose a lot, right? So you don't have to. I try to trigger myself. It's really important, I think, in this time when we can all be singing from the same songbook that we have views that might just bother us inherently. So I've deliberately picked a few names of irritating people. The first really irritating is Keith Olbermann, right? This guy is just tough. But I bring him up to give an important context. So Keith Olbermann, I liked him because I was into sports for a while and he was a sports guy and then he went into a lot of politics. So usually his take is the opposite of mine, but I find it important nevertheless to get these voices through. So he did one of these things where he takes a video and films himself ranting about stuff. He's become known for these. And he did one the other day about how everyone who is unvaxxed is really a coward, right? They're all cowards. Let's call them what they are, cowards, he said, right? Now, I bring it up just to say that let's look at the other side of that for a second, and it's important so that we can go on to talk about systemic risk management. Who in the whole thing about vaccines isn't operating out of fear, right? That's not the only one thing I want to say to him, right? Is he the only one not operating under fear, right? Was it fear of the vaccine? Was it fear of anything? Social fear of bothering your neighbor, not doing a thing that would be seen as conscientious and thoughtful, right? All this to say, it's not even to say that Keith Olbermann is right or wrong, vaccines right or wrong. That's not the point, right? The point is to say that most decisions we make are actually out of fear. Before the pandemic, you might have thought we're rational and we collect a bunch of data and then at the end we make a conclusion, right? The show's not about that at all, actually. Like we don't believe that anymore. We used to think that at a certain point, but nowadays we know that there are other factors that motivate behaviors and choices, and we're all in the middle of that. And fear in this case is generally used as one of the most important factors when we make decisions. Now, what we do to manage our fear is we create systems. Systems are everything, right? Systems help us manage the fear. They help us hedge the risks of everything, right? So it really is a risk management, idea that we can use to eliminate fear from our lives. What Keith Olbermann has done, right? And if I can, mind read him for a second, I don't want to put too many words in his mouth, but I think what Keith Olbermann means to say is I'm not afraid of the virus because I've chosen a system of believe the science and they made these vaccines and I'm going to be okay. I think a lot of people think that, and I'm not arguing with that. To say there isn't any fear at the beginning is to miss out on why he believes in science in the first place, is to alleviate the fear, right? Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, gave a speech on about 5 or 6 days ago, but we're starting to get more details now and it's starting to be discussed more, where he says that there are systemic risks in the financial system that need to be rooted out and you need more reporting. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But Gary Gensler's system that he's chosen is basically the Wall Street regulatory system, right? We had Joe Biden the other day mention that there's perhaps a White House executive order on cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, right? That's basically a system, and he says that the reason why there'll be an executive order is because of national security risk, right? So here, the system that Joe Biden is using is to listen to his generals to say there's an issue, right? We have national security, perhaps economic concerns are now at the military level, something that we talked about the other day, that world wars are actually a component much more than ever before of economics, right? It's not just about how many missiles do you have. There is a certain flexing of economic capacity that we are starting to see on the fault lines of what could be described as a world war. So everyone has a system to manage their risk, right? Everyone has a system. And most of those systems are actually designed to mitigate the fear that we can have of something breaking, right? But what could go wrong, and we build a system to manage that. So systems are really important. And we're talking about the psychology engine of the economy. Those systems are really important because that movie Dune that everyone loves and I love, and I even believe that one of the famous lines, "Fear is the mind killer," was already put into a crypto piece by Arthur Hayes, one of the only non outside of the box names I'm going to mention today, outside of crypto. Arthur Hayes wrote a great piece this summer called "Fear is the Mind Killer," right? So of course, fear has to be managed, right? It has to be managed. Now, what I'm going to do here is compare the risk management systems around the Federal Reserve and that of Bitcoin. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one is more risky. I'm just going to say it the best I can, right? I'm going to describe the risk management system of the Federal Reserve the best I can. Now, how hard is it to describe the exact detail of the risk management system? Well, I only have a little experience. I worked for a Senate banking committee. I did a lot of work with central bankers. I worked directly with central bankers at a certain point. I spent a lot of time in New York City working with early CoinDesk and watching all the first institutional piece of Wall Street come around Bitcoin. I did a lot of explaining to people. I started to see how all the pieces fit. If you spend enough time in New York City, you can see how the Wall Street engine works. And I think I can see it that way. I have a law degree as well. So the law degree really does help me to see a lot of these systems as engines, as motors, and we can sort of find out if you move one piece, then what happens. And the third part of my experience here is that I worked with Kraken for quite a while, and my file really was the bank in Wyoming and managing what the relationship with the Kansas City Federal Reserve would look like. And maybe you don't know this, but the Federal Reserve actually has like a UX UI. They have like a a booklet for new customers, right? Just like your commercial bank would. It blows your mind what they actually do. It's like, how do you get to the Fed discount window and ask for $25 million minimum? Well, you go here and you go show your collateral. Da, da, da. I have all this stuff, which is wild, right? So that was something that I did. So I only have that experience. It's not a lot. And even I can't explain what's going on at the Federal Reserve, right? Apparently, it's not enough to work for a major G7 country, understand their banking, work with their Federal Banking Reserve, be in Wall Street for years, spend a lot of time in the New York Stock Exchange, and manage a relationship with a Federal Reserve Bank. And I can't really explain it to you. I'm going to do my best, but I can't really. If you want it explained, go talk to a guy like Rohan Gray, right? He seems to understand it a lot more than I do. He seems to have answers to all this stuff, no matter how complex it is. So I would definitely suggest going to see Rohan Gray if you need more information on more detailed information about the Federal Reserve. I'll do my best here, right? I'm going to do my best, but some people can do it better. Okay, so now the system that I've chosen here really just highlights this is a general matrix you can use to understand risk management systems, right? I'm not making up these in red. Identify, plan, implement, communicate. That's sort of a general matrix for understanding risk management systems and the order and the flow. Now the details I put in, I'm trying not to put too many details, just so you see the broad strokes and the shape of it, right? I don't want to put stuff in there that's controversial or maybe debatable. We don't want to waste time on debate. We just want to see what systems are in place and what does the system look like and how we can compare them. So in the case of, let's do Bitcoin first, right? Here I've got Bitcoin in blue and green for dollars, if you can't really see that on the board. The key here is Bitcoin in blue, those are the risks when I'm talking about the system, and then green is the risk for the Federal Reserve. So Bitcoin, market risks, right? Certainly market risks. All of the coins that are listed, that can be included in a certain sense in Bitcoin market risk, because we can't go to the world and explain to every single person that this coin and that coin. I think most of the world just sees it all as Bitcoin, right? And then you've got other coins, and then things happen, and then it looks like the whole industry is getting painted with one brush, but that's just reality. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You can message, you can communicate, but for the average person out there, an exchange hack, Bitcoin eats it as much as anything. So market risk is part of the whole system, right? There's systemic market risk. Even as another news item today, I noticed that Blockworks mentioned a story where I guess they're describing crypto crash could be a systemic risk right now. The IMF has come out and said that a crypto crash would be a systemic risk to the global financial system, right? So this is all out in the news right now. There's a lot of priming around systemic risk and a lot of talk about it. That's why I've chosen today's subject on that. So there's definitely market risk in the case of Bitcoin. Then there's social risk, right? If a country decides, it's kind of a political risk, but if a country decides to attack Bitcoin, there are resources, they can do it, right? It is a risk that's been identified. There's the technical risk, like the technology has a risk, right? We all know that things can break and there could be a bug that we never saw, right? Here's the thing about cryptography. Only one person has to find the mistake in it, right? A million people can work on solutions, but if there's one mistake, it's an unfair fight, it's not fair, but one mistake can crash the whole thing, right? So that's just a reality of the technology. It's not the same as consumer technology where you can just run over a mistake in a Zelda game or in a Mario Kart game. There's a patch, okay, you ship the patch, there's a glitch in the game. Well, in this system, in a cryptographic system, no glitches, no time for glitches, right? You can't have them. The cost is too great. The cost is in effect the whole system, right? So it can't have it. So those would be those risks. The case of the market risks, identifying them in central banking, they're very clear. I'm not going to go over them too long. These are the well understood, well agreed upon risks. There's market risk, right? So they've just said that crypto poses a market risk for the larger system. I'd say that's true, right? I'd say what the IMF said. If crypto crashes, there's probably a risk to the global financial system. They'll notice. It's not so small that it would go unnoticed. There's interest rate risk, right? So what happens if you raise interest rates to the economy? Well, they know that is a large risk right now, and everyone who's got loans, right? Everyone who's got some form of credit, that would definitely have a hamper on demand. And then inflation, another risk, right? That's sort of what they're managing towards all the time in the central reserve system, managing a targeted inflation, right? So those are the three identifiers. Those are the three things they're trying to manage. The three risks they're trying to manage. So now plan, that's the second piece, right? If you can see it here, plan. So in the case of Bitcoin, I won't go over it too much. It's BIPs, right? Bitcoin improvement proposals, right? So you identify risks here, either market risks, not much they can do about that. They can They can communicate other stuff, but we'll get to that later. There's not really much you can do on the part of market risk, but it's there. Social risk, certainly, there's a lot you can do. You can follow the hash rate. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on. And then, of course, tech, right? That's where the Bitcoin improvement proposals come in. Now, on the case of the Federal Reserve System, this one here, monitor data, right? If you can see that, monitor data, right? When I say monitor data, I mean all the data, all of it, everything. They go as granular as first-time home buyers of condos in XY city. They look at all the data as it comes in. Any data is good, right? All things. They look at it, they ponder it, they think about it, but all the data is coming in. When Gary Gensler says they're going to create these new reporting requirements to manage some of the risk that he sees, right, when he mentioned that last week, what he's actually talking about are new reporting requirements that would come specifically for large private funds that are borrowing, using the repo market. He wants to see visibility on what they're doing for buying T-bills, getting cash, using the collateral. He wants to see the flow of funds. That's what he's asking for. More data on a class of people that were not really, that they didn't have oversight over, okay? And they write papers, right? They write academic papers, a lot of academic papers. That's a big part of it, right? A lot of academic papers. Now we go into implementation, right? Implementation. So in Bitcoin, the systemic risk management here, you run a node, right? That sort of, you run the software and sort of manages the risks that come from the BIP and tech risks. And that's what you got to do, right? You run your node, you find out and maintain your own copy of the ledger and have some insight into what's going on. In the case of the Federal Reserve, it's rate adjustments, right? It's the throttling of sales of T-bills, right? Treasury bills. So they only sell so many when they're at auction to some people. And then new reporting requirements. That's part of implementation. But I will warn you, there's a piece here that's really not well understood. And it's part of the risk management, but I would be lying if I said people are actually watching it, monitoring it. You assume they are, but they're not. And it's something called the euro dollar, right? Euro dollar. I don't mean euros. It's not euros. Euro dollars are offshore US dollars, right? Offshore US dollars. They came about because, let's say Burger King is in Japan, right? So you got Burger King in Japan, and now they got a bunch of local Japanese bills to pay. So they got to pay them in yen, but they've got other stuff they want to pay back in America, you know, the home office or whatever, and they got to send them, so they need US dollars. So Bretton Woods, if you go back to where this whole system started at World War II, they mandated demand for US dollars to clear all international transactions, oil, sending money home for treasury, all that stuff, right? So everything turned into, you needed dollars, right? You needed dollars. And that created this euro dollar. Now, at first, the euro dollar was just IOUs. Milton Friedman, the economist, said they were all created at the stroke of a pen. So if I owed someone abroad, I had to pay a bill in euro dollars, I would make sort of an IOU, and then there would never actually be dollar. Technically, there would be no dollars created, but it would create liabilities, obligations on balance sheets all around the world that says there's US dollars on them, right? Now, here's the thing. We don't have any idea. To this day, no clue how many euro dollars there are. No one has any idea. Now we follow the M2 money supply, right? We always say M2, M2. Almost all of the data monitoring references M2. M2 money supply being money in accounts, money on digital ledgers all over the world, and not, pardon me, not all over the world, all over America. M2 monitors American deposits. It monitors American financial activity. It monitors whatever's going on domestically. It has no concept of what's going on internationally. It's ignored. We don't know the size of the euro dollar. So I mean to bring this up because it's an important part of risk management, right? So if the whole plan is to monitor data and then to adjust these numbers here so that it comes out right, well, the amount of money that's out there is pretty important, but we don't know, right? Now, I'm not saying that that is a fatal flaw. I'm just saying we don't know. We've been managing it for years. There was a very famous speech in the 1990s called Irrational Exuberance by the Fed chair at the time, Alan Greenspan. Irrational Exuberance, the subtitle was, where's the missing money? Who's filling all the demand for US dollars? Where's it coming from? How is it being created? So in the end, the conclusion was, well, rational, we can be exuberant, things are great. People love the dollar, 1996, we're having a great time. But they still didn't answer the question. To this day, we haven't answered the question. We don't know. We just don't know. We go on and we don't know. I mentioned on the show Friday the demand for US dollars sinking because of what Russia was going through was a major change, a major difference. And it probably is. And if this Eurodollar thing goes away, I don't know the repercussions. I don't know. I can't tell. But it's got to be important, I think. We'll see. Anyway, all of these things are what they do. So they got the Eurodollar, we don't know, and then they do stuff to it, and then we don't know, and then maybe there's enough money at the end. That's sort of what's going on. Now, communication, right? So in the case of Bitcoin, right, fights, media, there's dedicated media, there's shows like this. But one of the peculiar things you're getting is generally a bunch of people like myself that take time out of our day to do this, that have been in Bitcoin for a long time and see it as a worldview thing and see everything through that lens. So you do have a lot of people who want to share information sort of at their own volition, not because it's a job or because we've been hired or anything like that. So that's one part of the media. You get another part that's, you know, they say toxic, there's a lot of fighting, but that's part of the risk management system, I would say, right? Good and bad, that's part of the risk management system. In the case of the Federal Reserve, they certainly have media following it much more than what we do in Bitcoin. We've got a couple of people, but they've got huge institutions. And then they got all these speeches, right? Where everyone, I remember when I was working in the Senate and they would come, they would have all these people that would monitor the markets whenever the central bankers were speaking. And they would say something and they would go, when they would say, you know, speculate too much. This is around the Greek debt crisis stuff. And you'd see them, they'd look at the markets, what happened? He said something, oh my God. That's really how they operate. I mean, I don't know what to say other than then I was surprised he would sit next to me where the researchers go in the Senate committee and these guys would just be doing that. So, but that's the thing, right? And that's why you see all this nervousness around some of the things they say. And when people are sort of trying to mind read what Jerome Powell meant and the market shifts because he didn't say a nice thing, that's because actually the speeches are a huge part of the risk management system, a really big part. They telegraph and signal direction, and therefore people try to divine what's been said. So that's the loop, right? So once it's communicated, that this part here is sort of an A/B test, right? You identify again after you've already communicated. So all of that stuff really in the end means these two systems are really different. Now, for me personally, right? Even though I was really close to the system, I still don't understand it. Like I can't really measure my risks. And I'll go back to what I said about the vaccine piece as well, right? What Keith Olbermann at the beginning. Still to this day, I mean, I don't know my relative risks versus COVID and the vaccine. I'm not asking anyone out there to do the numbers for me. Each of us have our own specific risk profile when it comes to this stuff. So I'm not waiting anymore for anyone to say what my risk is one versus the other, right? You're on your own a little bit. You're on your own, actually. And when I look at the system, it's kind of the same deal. You're on your own. You got to choose which system you think manages risk better for, in this case, money, right? So for me, it's just a simpler risk management system. I don't have to worry too much about what's going on in the case of Bitcoin. And this other thing, I still don't understand the Eurodollars. I don't, right? I try, I don't. So you add up all this. In the end, the Federal Reserve System is really, you know, a lot of people have to do the right thing for it to work, right? They gotta get it right each time. And I want to mention just one more thing for the day. Another fella who sort of triggers Bitcoiners. So I got Rohan Gray, Keith Olbermann, but who cares? He's not really a Bitcoin trigger. But Rohan Gray certainly triggers Bitcoiners. Another would be a guy named Kevin Muir. I followed him for central bank stuff before Bitcoin, and he's become really anti-Bitcoin, but I still follow him because he's got a lot of good material on central bank stuff. And he had a terrific guest on the other day, and I want to read just a couple quotes from him. His name is Joseph Way, FedGuy12 on Twitter, if you want to follow him, FedGuy12 on Twitter. So this is a macroeconomics podcast without Bitcoin. It's pretty boring, but I listened. So this guy says, took a couple quotes out of the podcast. He says, the Fed is government. It's much more post office than bank. You can think of it as a business that can't fail, run by people who can't be fired. Can't be fired. Is that true? Right? Can they not be fired? Well, it turns out that a lot of these people, like the post office, right? You have a job and then you get promoted and then you're somewhere because they can't fire you and they had to promote you. what his observation in the end was, and it's pretty staggering. I wish anyone to listen to this podcast just to understand the dynamics inside the Fed. He gives a real insider's view of what's going on. And one thing he actually says is he says the people who actually make decisions, I thought it was really concerning about their level of competence. So what he observed was everyone who was doing operational stuff, day-to-day stuff, had a talent level that really impressed them, really knew their stuff. What he noticed was a lot of the people who actually make decisions, the top of the whole pile, usually didn't know what was going on. And that shocked him. It really shocked him. He tells a couple anecdotes. I won't steal too many stories, but he tells a couple anecdotes in this about how he noticed these decisions being made from time to time, and how he noticed people got promotions that certainly were not helpful for risk management systems. So that's why I bring it up. It seems like if the system is built on people, well, you should have a good human resources management system in place as a subsystem, but we don't really have that, right? That doesn't really exist. So that's what we got today. We got fear, we got risk management, right? We make decisions out of fear, and that's the way it is, right? And for me personally, when I'm to add up what I would be more afraid of, I'd be more afraid after living through this COVID experience of trusting a bunch of people to get the right answer coordinated and together that makes sense to me, versus a system that, luckily I don't have to do too much to manage my risk.
I love it, Nolan. I feel like most of the people, not necessarily around me, but just like my gut feel from the day, is that people aren't aware that they have choices in this life. It seems they're not only not doing risk management, but they're not looking into any of this. They don't understand. And for a long time, I didn't either. I didn't know that there was a way to opt out of the Fed's fast and loose monetary policies. I didn't know that this was just kind of an open-ended system for printing numerals indefinitely, and that there's really no one held responsible for it. I didn't know that the gains are all privatized and the losses are made public. And I mean, it's just, the deeper you look into it, it's really horrifying. I really like that quote that goes, if people knew how the money worked, there'd be a revolution in the streets tomorrow.
I think so. So my goal today was to merely say we're all on the same page. Everyone's operating out of fear, right? Everyone's operating out of fear. And what you need is a system that addresses most of those fears. And when I see stuff like the Eurodollar that I still can't explain it. I mean, I have a law degree. I worked in the Senate Banking Committee. I worked on Wall Street. I set up a bank, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I've lived abroad. I knew about manipulated markets because I was first an English teacher in South Korea and Japan before I went to law school, and I went back as a lawyer there. And so it's a matter of fact. People know that those central banks are buying US T-bills to keep their fiat currency low in order to continue to export to America. The Triffin dilemma, right? The Triffin dilemma. You hear that a lot on Stacey and Max's show. The Triffin dilemma. All the Triffin dilemma is when you're demanded, when the demand is basically legislated for global dollars. The demand for US dollars is almost de facto global legislation, right? I won't say legislation because no one wrote the law. There is no global government, but you have no choice, right? You got to do it. You're going to buy oil, you got to use dollars, right? That's been around for quite a while now. And the argument there was the short-term needs of all these governments would trump the long-term needs of America, right? That America wouldn't be able to think of its long-term needs because look, we've had 0%. They haven't really used these controls in 30 years, right? They haven't. Like they can do a little bit. They've done some stuff, but they're limited in the toolbox. What I heard a lot when I worked closely with them is we have this toolbox. We can do stuff, right? Because senators would ask them, what are you going to do if interest rates, you can't lower them anymore? Oh, we have toolbox. They do. They can buy stuff right off the market, right? Which is what they did this time around. We saw the toolbox, but it doesn't really fix a lot of the problems that they have, right? And that's where my issue lies.
Yeah, yeah. I think broadly, I mean, when your ability to plan for the future is diminished or prepare for the future is diminished, vice versa, your ability to plan and prepare for it, it's compromised. And that's what we're seeing as a nation. But that's what I think we've been kind of like almost socially trained. We've accidentally lulled ourselves to sleep like this. And it's just,
Well, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. I'm a believer in persuasion and priming, right? Not persuasion, persuasion. There's actually things that you can devise, in once you see people talking about something. We saw it with the what was it called? It's the big Joe Rogan thing now. When everyone's
Spotify?
Sharing. No. Everyone's sharing a
mass
delusion.
formation
Mass formation
psychosis.
Yeah. That's the standard operating mode. It's always that, right? So when I saw that brought up out of nowhere, I was like, what's going on here? Like, why are we talking about mass formation psychosis? Like, to me, that's the soup.
We
right?
broke the simulation.
We're in it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It is always a mass formation psychosis. Because of this fear thing, right? We're making decisions not rationally, really, right? We're always making them out of fear. And Keith Olbermann, totally wrong to say these people are cowards. Who isn't in front of COVID, right? We're all afraid of something, all of us. Bitcoiners are afraid of lots of stuff too. It's not like Bitcoin fixes, your ability to be afraid of market problems, right? I don't have to count on these people doing this thing, and I don't have to count on them monitoring data and telling me about Eurodollars and what are they, right? I don't know. Like, I wish I knew. I don't. Ask Rohan Gray. He says he knows. He says he knows.
All right. Well, as long as someone's got it taken care of, if you trust that system, I guess you're good. Well, Nolan, great to have you.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. If you trust it, okay.
Yeah, I do not myself. Great to have you. I'm excited to, I guess, get into this more tomorrow, I think.
Awesome. All right, guys.
All right. Take care, man.
Yeah.
Q. What do we have? We have a last announcement for the people. We have a last great announcement before we wrap this up here.
Are we making last call? Is that?
Yeah. It's the last call.
Last call for tickets.
Call. Get your Bitcoin 2022 tickets today, or you're dead to us.
So I'm guessing because we didn't drop any Sats codes, you guys kind of let us down.
Yeah, they did.
And didn't on the last day of the biggest discount. Don't come crying to us when the tickets are way too expensive because you only get, I don't know, 10% off. Maybe we just won't. We'll just deactivate all discount codes for like 24 hours.
Yeah. If
we'll
you,
because we have the power to do that.
You'll never be a whole coiner if you don't use this discount code. I feel like that's about where we're at today, right? That's like the ambition. People want to become whole coiners. That's why we're getting in arguments about sats versus bits, is because these people, we only have like pennies of Bitcoin.
I mean, like, let me ask you this. What side of it are you on? Like,
what do you mean?
Sats or bits?
I think in terms of whole Bitcoins, man, I don't give a shit. But like,
I'm actually a very big Sats person. I prioritize Sats over a whole Bitcoin. Maybe that exposes me, but
yeah.
I also normalizing the word is important. Everyone knows what Bitcoin is. No one knows what Satoshis are. Not nearly at the scale that people know what Bitcoin is.
This is just like a rehashing of something that happens every year, but like, sats are definitely hard for people. Like, take our anchor Isabella, for example. When she learned like what sats were, she like couldn't say the word. Like, it's not a natural word. Bits is like way more intuitive. It's way more intuitive, but we didn't use it from the beginning, and you can't mandate language. This is what like fucking like, how do I say this nicely? Like,
language
these crazy,
is so arbitrary. Like,
no,
all the guys.
No, it's not arbitrary. No. Listen, these like crazy liberal, like critical race theory, gender soup Nazis, like these insane people at universities that want to tell you how to speak. That's not how language fucking works. I'm always been a descriptive linguist kind of guy. Language is what it does. Like, if you communicate the idea properly, like, that's probably going to come into vogue. It'll probably exit the language at some point. It changes over time. It's like this organic, hive mind thing. If people had been using sats from the get-go, I think we would have a smoother ride, but they haven't, and they won't. I don't think we're definitely not gonna have 3. We're not gonna have Bitcoin bits and then sats. I don't think. Do you think we'll break it down into little units like that?
That just too much.
Yeah, I feel like that just incentivizes people to think smaller. Like, oh, you'll get to a whole bit someday. It's like, no, get to a Bitcoin. Like, get off your ass. Like, get that, rake in that 40 grand. Like,
well, we have to recognize, like, it's already broken into 100 million, like, cents, if you will. Like,
learn how to count. 6 decimals, son. 7, 8. How many decimal points are there?
9.
9.
Learn how to count, bro.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't even know.
No,
I think there's
8 decimals.
Is it 8? Okay.
8 decimals.
Yeah. How many different forms of dollar coins do we have? We have a lot, but we also have a lot that didn't stick around.
I want to throw out tinfoil hat time because we're just like.
Did you get a tinfoil hat?
No, I did. Honestly, I had it next to me the whole time when I was talking to CJ, and I put it away when I went off camera for a while. But do you?
What is Susan? Hold on. What is Susan B. Anthony? What are you talking about, Chris?
Like a dollar quarter or dollar coin.
Why is it? What the hell? Who's Susan B. Anthony? Why is it called that? I don't know anything about this.
Know,
who is that? No.
You don't know who Susan B. Anthony is?
No, I've never heard of that person.
I mean, she, if I'm not mistaken, someone like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but she was like,
you don't know who she is either.
No, she's a huge like women's rights like movement person, right?
Yeah. What in the 60s?
No,
or
like
when?
way
before the 60s,
dude.
Anti-slavery.
Like she died
most
in 1906.
People are anti-slavery. She died in 1906. Okay, yes. That's why I don't know who she is, man. She's 150 years old.
I think you know people who are older than her, but sure. Not the point, not what I was trying to go for. I'm curious to know, do you buy into the theory that like verbalized language and speech and communication came to pass because our deep pre-human ancestors essentially stumbled across magic mushrooms, and then like the concept of verbalized speech and communication?
No. Have you ever taken this? No, bro. Have you ever taken mushrooms? You can't talk.
Yes,
if you take a significant amount of mushrooms, you can't talk. What is this? What are you talking about? Are you talking about like Mongolian throat singing?
No, I'm talking like early cavemen. Their main form of communication was not like English. It wasn't Latin. Like they didn't have.
No, they had gestures just like all animals do, and sounds.
Dude, is this like, wait, I want to see the comment. Do people not? Oh, no one's in the comments.
Is there anything happening?
Miami? Chris, you made it seem like people were like chirping me in the comments about this. What? It's just crickets. It's literally just us talking to each other.
It's 25 people. We're just talking to each other, man. Susan B. Anthony.
I fully buy into the idea that like prehistoric humans, before they had like some form of like, even before like grunting and like words really existed, like they would really just communicate with body language and like maybe grunts or stuff. But like the idea of formulating words, like if we really stop to think about it, like honestly, the only thing to me that makes sense to shift your mind so drastically to like even think of like articulating sounds like that would be to be high on mushrooms.
I don't know, man, because words are like functionally not that much different from gestures. That's why sometimes you'll say something and it makes sense to you, but it won't make sense to the other person. Like they're just directional arrows just guiding you. This idea to this idea to this concept to this concept. It's just like a more complicated version of pointing in my mind. That's why even as specific as you want to get with words, there are most like physical phenomena you cannot explain in entirety. You can kind of lead people to the door, but you can't get them over the line. You can't actually put them there with words alone. That's why literature is great, because you can never, like, you're never going to run out. And that's why we're never going to run out of great Bitcoin essays. We're never going to run out of, you'd think we would have run out by now, but no.
You kidding me? Do you see how much is written about the US dollar? We're still like, Bitcoin still just became a teenager.
Yeah.
We have like centuries of writing about Bitcoin. Like we're right now only seeing stuff really being written through the lens of like what Bitcoin can do off of the past system. But like we haven't even exposed or started to think about like what's the writing going to be like that references like, okay, Bitcoin is the system now. How do we like move it forward in this iteration of it? Or how do we look previously at the first iterations of the Bitcoin standard and improve upon that in the future? Like, to your point, there's so much that is yet to be uncovered to bring it back home about Bitcoin.
I'm just reading about Susan B. Anthony. This lady's cool. Yeah, she should have her own dollar. It's cool.
Shout out
Sorry.
Shot Boys Al for actually paying attention to our Eastside Tony. I am not high on shrooms. Like what?
All right, we got to wrap this up, kids. Get your Bitcoin 2022 conference tickets, 21% off with promo code YTMAG at checkout. You can get an additional like $100 off if you just buy in Bitcoin. So use Strike. Buy your tickets with Bitcoin. Do it now. Do it today. This is the last time you can get 21% off. Ticket prices are only going up. They're only, they're scarce, so there's only a limited amount of them. Yeah, get your tickets now. Any last call, Q?
Come join us in Miami. You will regret it. You will genuinely regret it. And then we're gonna say I told you so. Like we're gonna do a lap of I told you so as the first show back after.
No, we won't even be on the same planet as you. If you don't go to the conference and we go to the conference, like you won't even understand us. You know what I mean?
So
we'll be on
jokes.
We're gonna come back behind a paywall, and you had to pay at the conference. Like you won't want to miss this, guys. Yeah, you won't want to miss this, guys. Get your tickets today if you haven't already. Can't wait to see you all there. Yep, we're all gonna have a great time in Miami. So 21% off with promo code YTMAG. All right, that's it for today, guys. Have a good one.